All right.
Lovely.
Wasn't the cleanest of
Nice.
claps.
It wasn't the cleanest of claps. I forgot
Do-
that we were going to do like a go after the 3, so I was a little delayed.
That's all right. Do you want to go? Do you want to go again?
No, I think it's perfect. I think we'll...
I think
it'll
it
be fine.
perfectly depicts the state of us and what people can expect from this episode, considering we're truly going global for this one. We've got Jason in, what's the time zone?
Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time. It's 10:20 a.m. for you. No, 8:20.
It's 8:20.
8:20 a.m. for Jason, so early in the morning. I'm in the CET time zone, so a nice little 2:20 p.m. middle of the day for me. And now we've got Chad over there back home after 11 years, reunited with his family and his country. He's in what time zone?
I would say GMT plus 8, but I don't know what the actual official.
All right, I was hoping
fucking
you would
Western
have
Australia
the name
time
for us,
zone
but
is.
yeah, you're 7 hours ahead of me, so you're at 9:20 p.m. Nice little evening for you. Jet lag this fuck, of
Australian
course.
Western Standard Time, AWST.
Yes, that's the one. That's the one. That's
Jason,
the one.
Jason,
Yeah,
quick on the
I-
fingers.
I got it, baby.
We don't really work with that time. We kind of just like say we're at GMT plus 8. It's the same as China. You know, we're just hanging out here. We're doing our own thing. The rest of Australia is a couple of hours
No, and
ahead.
people used to say
I'm in the past.
People used to say in China we're on the same time as Western Australia, but times have changed.
I don't think they give a fuck about Western Australia. No one gives a fuck about Western Australia. I come home, nothing changed. There's just more roadworks. And there's a new McDonald's up the road from where my parents live. That's
Hell
about the only
yeah.
thing
I
that's
actually
changed.
saw when you tweet, I saw some guy reply to you with a tweet like, "Yo, have you checked out the new Macca's?" Like,
Yeah, it's
I
legit.
was like, that's actually the one thing that happened in 3 years, like a new McDonald's open. But I think I would see that as a good thing, probably.
Well, I did too, right? Because if the cooking sucks on Christmas Day, I can go and get a 6-pack of chicken
No, I mean
nuggets up the
not
road,
just
mate.
the McDonald's, just like the fact that not much has changed.
I had a double cheeseburger
Yeah.
yesterday
Well, on the way home or at the airport?
on the way home. That's all I had.
Okay.
That's all I'm contributing. Go on.
Like in America?
Of course,
or...
Jason, of course, flies business class back home, you know, access to
did
the
fly business
lounges
class.
and everything, and goes and eats McDonald's.
Was it good though, Jason?
But you're
No,
probably
it
hungover,
wasn't good. I was really hungry though. I needed like so I flew to Chicago and then I had to drive like 3 hours home. So I just needed like a holdover, you know, for the ride.
Ah, yeah, that's fair. Fair enough.
A holdover for but at McDonald's in America, have we had this conversation before?
I think we had it
feel like
on
we
one,
have.
but it is better everywhere else in the world than
Yes.
it is in America.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys gotta sort that shit out. Actually, no, you don't.
we don't.
You got so much other good shit. McDonald's doesn't have to be good. You got fucking Chick-fil-A and you got all the burger joints. You got your In-N-Outs. We definitely have had this conversation before. This is the thing. The brain right now, I imagine for Jason and I, is like in this weird kind of limbo, are we alive or are we dead state? And Yanko's just like, I'm fucking chilling, man. It's midday, everything's good. The only thing is for you boys, it's cold as shit.
True.
And for me, it's like today was 36 degrees.
That
So
must be nice.
slight melting going. It's still 28 degrees right now at almost 9:30 at night.
That's a bit too warm.
So
I have like
It's
18
pretty
inches
hot.
of snow right now outside my window.
The weather here
Oh,
is now what it was when I was at Jason's place like a month ago. So I can imagine how cold it is for
It's
him.
negative 5
18
degrees Celsius here right now.
-5. Okay, all right, yeah, that's pretty. On the television in front of me here, where I've set up my hodgepodge setup, my girlfriend was watching some Christmas movies while I was having a nap, and now on the screen is just this beautiful picturesque thing with lanterns and snow falling in some animated loop. And I'm just being taunted by that right now. I can't have the aircon on, otherwise the ambient noise will bleed through the microphone
you're
and
just
everyone will
sweating.
hate the recording.
All right, so
It is kind of hot. Yeah.
while we're on the topic, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Well,
Yes.
he said it himself, didn't he?
Yes, it
Didn't
is.
Mr. Bruce Willis come out and say himself and say it isn't a Christmas movie?
No, it's a Christmas movie.
No matter what the fuck Bruce Willis says.
Bruce Willis is wrong?
Well,
Yeah, in this instance.
He said like that was an interview with like Oprah or someone, if that's what you're referencing, Chad, because the movie was out in like the summer that it was released originally or whatever.
Yeah, but a lot of Christmas
Yeah, it didn't
movies
come out
were-
at Christmas
A
time.
lot of Christmas movies were released in the summer.
I don't know. I was gonna say yes. It does feel like for whatever reason it's been implanted into my brain that it is like a Christmas movie. That a lot of people, I think there's a lot of people who consider it a Christmas movie.
Yeah, it takes place during Christmas.
But probably 2 is more than 1. Oh yeah, it does, right? But it's in LA, so it's, there's no snow.
Yeah. They're all wearing coats though. Still.
There's lots of murder though. That's pretty synonymous with Christmas. Murder of presents.
Does it count?
You see the reach there?
Does it count as murder when someone takes over the Nakatomi Tower? I think it counts as like self-defense.
True. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was doing. Yeah, that's right. They were terrorists.
Yeah.
So he was out there doing his absolute best.
So it's
Weren't they German?
So it's like Overwatch, right?
Hans.
Like and Valorant. If it's animated, then it all goes. But because it's Counter-Strike, it's like they look human and it's fine. So they're not real people. They're terrorists. So you can do to them whatever you want.
I see the reach in the fantasy worlds that we live in here. I'm just trying to pull myself together really for this right now. So I'm taking doing a couple of deep breaths. We're on the watch list right now, Yanko. I don't think you and I'll be going back to America.
I've been on the watch list for years, probably. Watch out for this damn fuck list.
Jason, who were you flying with? Was it Emirates? Or was it Etihad?
Etihad. Oh, the business class was great, man. Dude, I put a bid in for first class as well. I didn't get it. But
that's we discussed.
They still took your money though, didn't they?
Yeah, they still sat me in business class. I didn't get demoted for losing the bid. It was great. It was a 15-hour and 15-minute flight from Abu Dhabi direct to Chicago.
Jesus.
And I slept for 12 of them. I did a really good job.
That's miserable though. That's a long flight.
Yeah,
did you even enjoy the business class?
No, I caught up on all the sleep I didn't get. I think I averaged like the first 5 days there. I think I was averaging like 2 hours of sleep a night, and I think I just caught up on everything. That entire event was just like a jet lagged haze. But it was fun.
You guys went like quad biking and stuff. I saw it looked like
we went into the desert. They did like a I don't know what to call it. I would say like a dune buggy tour, but like we were in like a big SUV with like a roll cage, and they were going like they were cruising up and down the fucking dunes and like. I don't know, like side strafing down down on the other side and shit. It was pretty crazy. Rode some camels, fed some camels, rode some ATVs around the dunes. It was a good time. Did some body surfing.
Look all right.
Sand surfing, I think.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we got that here. We got plenty of dunes around here as well, and the same thing. Like we got a place called Lancelin here, which is like an hour away from the city, and the dunes are white here because it's close to the beach. So people go sand. But we used to have like I think it was like unlicensed, but it was a monster truck that you could like pay to go on. It didn't have any seatbelts or anything. It was fucking crazy. And then I think that's why they got shut down. But it was a good bit of fun, I think, until some people got hurt. I don't actually know the true lineage of this story, but I just know it existed at one point in my life and it doesn't anymore. So that's kind of sad.
Yeah, our guide told us when they had the UFC fights in Abu Dhabi, a bunch of people went out to do like the sand surfing, and one of them was one of the fighters on the other undercard, and he like tried to do like stand up surfing down the dune and fell and like sprained his shoulder or something and had to pull out of his fight. Like one of the fighters just like got injured doing sand surfing and just had to pull out. That would suck so bad.
Dana White through the moon now. Yeah, fucking hell. It looked like you guys we saw a lot of stuff from the players. I saw a lot of stuff from you guys there. There was a bit of content out there. For those people who don't know what we're talking about the Blast World Finals that were going on. Everybody was in business class. That must have fucking cost an arm and a leg, mate. Every man and his dog out there was in fucking busy class. I was in business class out to Australia, but I had to pay for that
yourself.
in my own little pauper pocket.
Yeah,
but nice little experience. I was on Qatar, so another very nice airline.
You were in the Q suite.
It was like I couldn't. The first flight was what was it? Frankfurt to Qatar, 6 hours, and then the second one, Qatar to Perth, is 11 hours. So it's actually not too bad when you break it up like that. That's
right.
Pretty.
I hate those 6-hour flights. 5, 6, 7 hours is the worst for me. Like, I'd much rather, as Jason, I'd much rather have one flight that's 15 hours than, like, an 8 and a 7-hour flight. Because...
I know what you mean.
At that point, you're just done with it, right? And especially if you're, like, flying business, you can sleep for a good amount of time. You have a nice meal. The seat is better, whatever. The entertainment, so you just watch, like, a couple of movies and then, you get it done. But this way... It's like 7 hours, and okay, you can do all those things just shorter, right? Take a shorter nap and just watch a movie, and then, but the whole notion of then airport again and transferring and wasting time there and waiting for another flight and boarding again and taking off, and it just adds so much to the travel time. I just like, for me, it's, I want to get there as soon as possible, even if it means getting wrecked. It's better than just prolonging the trip.
Yeah, I had a 3-hour layover, so that's the thing, right? Like,
But that's good.
I think one of the only flights. Well, yeah, I had a shower and stuff. I went in the lounge. And I couldn't believe how fucking big this lounge was. It had a water feature in the lounge that was like 50 meters long.
Nice.
Like, what the fuck is this? There was 2 restaurants. There was probably 30 to 40 showers across a lounge. There was like sleeping pods. I've never seen anything like it. I was like, well, it made. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back now. The trip was delightful, but I think if I could go from the UK, they do like a direct from the UK to Perth now. Like I think it's like a 16 or 17-hour direct, like straight
That's
shot.
mental, yeah.
That's that like longest
Qantas.
flight in the world, isn't it? That
It is
like,
right now.
testing?
Yeah.
I think so.
Right now it is.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to have a look into
That or
'cause
Qatar has one to Auckland, New Zealand. So I think
shit.
it's one of those two is the longest.
Okay, Qatar to New Zealand direct. Holy shit! God, that seems like okay. We're getting to the point. Well, hopefully soon we can just fucking teleport, boys. I don't know how long that's going to take. Probably hundreds of thousands of years. We'll get there eventually.
I know. I enjoy
Maybe
that.
we'll get to
I
stay
enjoy
alive.
like, with all the miles that we get from traveling and all the stuff. Like usually I'm able to just upgrade myself for those long flights and business. Like I enjoy the whole sort of experience. For me, it's not a drag. I enjoy much more flying long haul than these short flights through Europe when I have to, I have an 8-hour travel day and 2 flights that are like an hour and 20 minutes somehow. The day just lasts so long. It's so annoying.
That's true. It does. I know whereas when I've like done like a quick flight to like Cologne or some shit, or even just into Frankfurt, I have to get to the airport 2 hours early, and then the flight's delayed by 45 minutes. Then I get to fucking thing, and then the bags take 40 minutes to come out because nobody knows how to staff a fucking airport in 2022 for some goddamn reason. It's like, what have we done? Have we forgotten how we ran shit before COVID? Nobody wants to work in a fucking airport. Actually, I don't blame them. I don't blame people for not wanting to work in a fucking airport. The guy told me I lost my bag. Right, I flew from Malta to Frankfurt, and I was just going to stay there for one night before getting on the flight from Frankfurt to Qatar, because it's not easy to like sync everything up. Most of the journeys from Malta, because of that travel time, had like 5 or 6 hours added overall. So it worked out better for me just to stay an extra night in Germany, and that was fine. But the fact that they lost my bag between Malta and Frankfurt, a direct shot flight, I was fucking livid. The bloke told me there, he was like, yeah, dude, he didn't say dude because he was German and he was old, so he definitely didn't say dude. But he was explaining to me that there's so few staff at the Frankfurt airport that there was already a 40-minute delay just to get bags off of the plane. And then outside of that, he was saying that some of the planes weren't even getting fully unloaded. The bags were just like staying on planes and getting sent to other places. I was like, what the fuck? Jesus. I know it's holiday time, but it's absurd, man. Like it's actually reached just this ridiculous point of the travel in Europe it's gotten to its worst state. I've been living there now for the better part of, I don't know, fucking 5 years, whatever, something along those lines. It's so bad. I don't know how it got shit. Every fucking flight's delayed. Bags are always lost. Like everybody who came to Malta for Pro League, I swear at least 35% of people lost their bags. It's fucking... I've sworn a lot. I apologize to the YouTube algorithm. Sorry, YouTube.
Yeah, we're not getting recommended to anyone man. All of a sudden.
I haven't said cunt yet. Oh, there we go. So that one, now we're demonetized before we can even get started. It's all going down the shitter. It's all over.
Well, we also said
I think I've become more Australian as well. That's true too.
You have like the
CIA,
the
terrorism.
Richard and Duncan effect. The longer you talk, the more your accent changes.
Yeah, I haven't even seen many. I've only seen my mum and dad really since I've been here. My sister got here today, and she's recently had a kid, and I was gonna see them and stuff when they landed, but they of course had a delayed flight, so. I had to come here to this. I got kicked out because my sister and the kid and her partner are coming, so there's no room for me at my parents' house. So I just, of course, spend more money to go stay somewhere else.
After 3 years, Chad, of not coming back.
Yeah. Well, they forgot about me. They took me all the pictures down off the walls.
It's not enough for you to get a room. How does that make you feel?
It's fine. I don't want to be in the house with a fucking crying baby anyway. So
Good point.
I probably won. I probably won here. I'm staying in a nice little area. I'm staying in an area of Perth called Cottesloe. Nice little area near the beach. Yeah,
Like the salad?
It's good here. Close to the salad. It's pretty delicious around here. I went and had Nando's, which you guys would know from the United Kingdom, but we got that here in Australia as well. So I'm getting all the good stuff out of the way. I think that's about it. That's the highlight so far. Nando's is the highlight.
Oh.
It's the holidays though, guys. We're for Yanko, we already covered this, right? It's not until the 7th of January or some shit. But you're probably celebrating now, Yanko. Serbia probably got up on the feet seeing Hunter and Nico win.
Yeah, I mean, I told you about those Slava things that we have as well in Rio in the last episode. Yesterday is a big one. It's Saint Nicholas. But so it's like the joke is half of the people celebrate that one and the other half goes, is invited to come, right? So that's a big one. But then it's New Year's. Yeah, I might go right before New Year's for a couple of days to like Athens or something just to get away from all the...
Athens is beautiful, man.
Yeah, and I love Greece and their culture and everything. So just to, it gets really, really crowded in Belgrade around New Year's, right? So last year I was going to lose my mind. It was also still kind of COVID, so there were some restrictions, or they were getting loosened up a little bit. So a bunch of people would come, from other countries or even from other cities in Serbia to Belgrade because they could enjoy themselves more. So it was just a mess. Like the city cannot handle that many people. Everything just grinds to a halt. So I want to avoid that. And yeah, I might just take a little trip right before New Year's, come back on the 31st or something. How about you, Jason? You're going to just chill at home?
I hope so. I think me and the...
I hope so.
No, I think me and the wife are planning some kind of trip. We're either going to go see her family in Virginia, or we might just go up to Toronto for a couple days and...
chill with Launders.
Yeah, chill with Launders. I think she's got a friend there as well. So yeah, might just do... I think she just wants to get out of the house. I got to travel. She's been stuck here at home for a minute, so... Yeah,
that's always the plight of it, isn't it? We all have experienced this. You come home and your partner's been waiting, going stir crazy inside, and the first thing they want to do is leave, and the last thing you want to do is fucking leave. You want to sit there on the couch
for a day or two at least,
watching. Yeah, that's always one of the weird balances, right? Of this. But Jason, you're in it. You've always been the most adult. I think you will handle this with poise and grace.
Yeah, poise and grace. That sounds good. Yeah, I think I'm gonna get my week of doing nothing here this week. These next 4 days as Christmas comes up, and then after that, I'll be reset enough to take a little road trip.
And you smashed it. You were straight in with my wife. You didn't. There was no you didn't stumble. There was no my girlfriend. You straight.
I have a lot easier saying wife than I did fiance. Fiance made me feel like an asshole.
Yeah, that is kind of
really.
Yeah, fiance I didn't really enjoy.
Okay.
I think it's because we have a foyer in our house. And that
a foyer.
Yeah, exactly. And that too makes me feel like an asshole.
You felt like a bit of an asshole.
Yeah. I was like, I've had enough of these fucking words. I'm not saying fiance. Foyer is where I draw the line.
Holy shit. Yeah, there's a couple of things that just make you feel a bit pretentious, doesn't it?
Yep. And they're all
That's
French.
probably one of them. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There you go. They got fucked, didn't they? I didn't watch the World Cup final, but I did wake up and talk to my old man about it, who got out of bed and watched it, and he seemed to have a good time. So it looked like it was a good game.
It was an awesome game. I've dabbled. I played soccer growing up. Played football, I guess we'll call it here. And I've watched a couple of World Cup finals, but I hadn't watched them in the last few. But this one was on, and it was fun. It was actually it got engrossing, obviously, with the way the game played out. For all you Europeans out there, obviously know. I was reading on Twitter. I'm sure there's some contention in the World Cup history, but this is supposed. People were saying it's like the best World Cup final they'd ever seen, and I know there's probably some young ones in there who haven't caught some of the older ones, but. It was crazy. It was fun to watch. We did the after party was at a viewing area outside of a bar in Abu Dhabi. Had the games playing on all the monitors, so it was fun.
Oh, you're on the time zone as well, basically, right? So
yeah, well, there were people at our hotel who were going to the World Cup. So apparently, what they did for the World Cup is some of these airlines would have packages where you could buy a World Cup package to go see this game, and a lot of people were staying in Dubai and Abu Dhabi because it's a 30 to 45 minute flight. So your package would Etihad would bus you to Qatar. or Qatar Airlines would bring you to Qatar, and then you'd watch the game, and then it would fly you back to the airport as well. So people were just kind of doing like day trips into Qatar just to watch the games, and then heading back to Dubai and Abu Dhabi to stay, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, look, I didn't watch an awful lot of the football. I only watched when the Aussies were playing, and then once they went out in the round of 16, I think that was about it. I didn't have too much staying power for it. I don't find other things enjoyable. I think I'm the fucking Grinch for everything in life other than Counter-Strike. And yeah, it's kind of, I need to broaden my horizons a little bit. I need to start taking in some more inputs. I need to find some more things I enjoy. That shouldn't be too difficult to do, should it? Is that a hard thing?
No. It's, well, you know, sometimes. I think you're doing okay. But yeah, like a hobby's always nice. Something else to just take your eyeballs off CS for like a day or two.
I want to play an ESEA Open next year.
I saw that.
That's still more Counter-Strike, but it's something to do. I've said that like last year as well, maybe for this year or at some point, and it never happens. Like it's so hard to make it happen.
I mean,
because
you know, it's
has
actually impossible.
Schedules and shit. But then we just need to have a roster of 15 people.
Yeah,
and then
that's what I was gonna say. Get
somehow.
the whole matchmaking crew. We all sign up, and just whoever's on is on.
Because just watching the World Finals, I was like, yeah, it's not that I want to play Counter-Strike at that level or anything. It's just I just want to be back in the server and play some CS and have a bit of fun with it.
The competitive intensity going.
Well, it's also more fun when you play with people who not necessarily like are very good players mechanically, but understand the game, so you can actually play some good Counter-Strike, right? Like, it's more fun that than having to play with Rush Chat, I bet.
Yeah, well, look.
Well, you can't play open with Rush because he only plays like 3 maps. He won't even, well...
Anubis, Ancient, and Vertigo.
Yeah, exactly.
The new Holy Trinity.
That little rat.
And he only plays on 64 tick servers as well, so, you know, there's a couple problems there with that.
Because that's the only where his Future Pros videos work.
Look, now he's got to the point with those Future Pro videos where he'll just get from the demo. So, you know, he's made his life a little bit easier. He doesn't even need to go in there and replicate it anymore. He just takes it from the demo.
Must be nice.
So, yeah, he's found the loophole here, as old Rushley. How was the show match, Jason? Because I couldn't watch another one of those. Was it the same as what it was where Blast still don't know how to enable these fun things without having SV_cheats on and the players just no-clipping around the map and ruining the fun?
Yeah. well, yeah.
Nice throw.
It was the same thing. It was like they had the same, like they did like the crazy rounds. They added a few new ones in there that were pretty funny, that were pretty good. So, I mean, yeah, it was another good and enjoyable show match. It didn't quite have the same hype without like the packed out arena and without like the initial, you know, shock value of like, they didn't have like any like celebrity walk out on the stage or anything. But yeah, it was good. We had some fun with it. I was a little bit hungover, which made things easier.
I think the last one was overrated as fuck anyway. People just compared it to man, I don't give a fuck. I'm jet lagged.
It's like people forgot the caches existed, you know? I think that's what's got
it's just because people compared it to Rio, and Rio was dog shit because the Brazilians tried hard.
Yeah.
But like what are we talking about? I just see like comments, you know, ESO fucking show matches are boring. I'm like, fuck you people, man. Like I'm reading all this shit. Just people are fucked. Like, people literally only remember the last thing that happened, which just shows me that why do I read what any of these cunts think? It's like, there's no brains anymore. Everyone's lost their mind. Every person in the fucking world has lost their mind. Wait till I get started on this G2 shit. Wait till I rip a couple of new fucking assholes out there. What world of Counter-Strike are we living in? It never used to be this way.
Let's just go.
We don't have to.
No, get after it.
So mad, man. When did we... I know I've had this rant before. I know I've gone off about this shit before. When did we live in the world where people judging Counter-Strike teams, like who have added 2 new people, which when I fucking was playing Counter-Strike, that constituted a brand new fucking Counter-Strike team, and all we did on desks back then when that happened was, oh, you know, there's promise in this roster. It's going to take time to get to the point of being good. And now it's like, nah, they play one event, they're fucking shit. When the fuck, in the history of 20 years of Counter-Strike, did that mindset become the norm? Fuck everybody, man. And now they come and win this event. Oh, yeah, look how good this guy is. Look at Hooksy, who's always a good in-game. Fuck you people. Fuck all of you. Like, I'm so mad about it. It irks me so hard. And then go and look at the teams and the events that G2 played since they've been together with this roster. And then go, oh, yeah, actually, you know what? They were taking maps off of good teams. It was fucking close. Fuck these people. Fuck them all, Jason.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem is in general, a lot of times, like there's so many, everyone's trying to come up with the hottest take, next hottest take, and just try to be edgy a lot of the times when, I understand that there's value in that, entertainment for people and whatnot, but the reality is, a lot of things are not that exciting. Like, a lot of things are, the reality is boring, that it's, well, the team just needs time to figure things out. Like, they're not immediately shit or immediately good. Whatever the result is, initially you need to look over time how things are going to develop. Right? And for G2, there were glimpses of like good sides, and there were obviously very terrible moments. Like Pro League, they were 10-0 in their group. They didn't lose a map. They beat Navi in a very good game in the playoffs, and then they lose to Vitality, right? By giving up, a 15-7 something comeback on Inferno that should have gone to 3 maps. So yeah, that sucks. RMR, obviously, they don't make it. That's horrible. Blastful Finals, again, disappointing without a doubt. And then here they played really good and they won the whole tournament, right? But you had people who were by this tournament, they changed their mind like not once but twice about G2. They were like, they were shit, and then they were like, oh, they're good, and then they're shit again, and now they're gonna change it for the third time and be like, oh, this team can win, right? Of course, any team like this is any team that has Hunter, Monesi, and Nico can win a tournament, dude. Like, and the fourth guy is JKS, who's also experienced, a very good player, good in the role that he was given, right, and whatnot. Then you have the in-game leader, right? Well, when he has 4 players like that, doesn't really have to frag as much. Sure, he can't have 3 kills a game, but he contributes mostly. His impact comes from somewhere else. So of course they could win a tournament, but that still wouldn't have made them instantly a contender. It's all about, can you do it on a consistent basis? And they still have to prove that. The same way that the fact that outsiders bombed out doesn't mean they're shit. The same way that they were not, they couldn't really tell that they were the best team just because they won the major. That was the one-off. You have to like keep having good results.
I think too, like G2's identity just got like so tied into Hooksy with all the memes that like when he was having those bad events and subpar performances, like I think it just kind of bled over into the full identity of G2. I think that craze just kind of built into that, like, like the snowball effect to where like G2's analysis was the Hooksy meme. And yeah, so I think, certainly people misread it. Certainly people kind of jumped on the gun too much, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
It just happens. Like, we sit here like,
educate them.
Like I know Yanko's standpoint on this as well. It's like with the Alexi thing, probably didn't need to happen. And then we sit here and we talk about the X-Taz situation. Like, why the fuck did he just pick up and leave after getting changes that they were looking for? Like, you can actually look at these certain things. You can have conversations about them, and you can question like why, or was that the right choice or not the right decision? But the bigger picture, and the one that people miss, is the actual fucking Counter-Strike is the thing that's going on in the server, and the way that teams approaching the game, and what looks good and what looks bad. Like, this is the bit that I lose my mind on. And I know that we can be quite storyline driven, especially the way that we do our jobs and stuff. And there's a lot of cool storylines to hit on with that G2 victory. But the thing at the end of the day that is the most important to all of this is the actual Counter-Strike being played in the server and how the teams are performing. Like, I'm reading people's opinions of Justin. It's just like, oh, he's just decided to play good now. It's like, what? No, actually take a look at the way that he's being used in the server now, being given some actual moves to be able to do on the T side instead of just sitting there waiting for other players to make the moves and nothing. He's doing fucking vent dives on Nuke again, which what he was doing when he was a star player on 100 Thieves / Renegades. He's getting dropped P250s on pistol rounds to try and find some frags. Like, he's actually was being given opportunities to do things. And sitting here, like, obviously I have a bias with all of this, right? But I watch the G2 games, and especially Justin, more intently than I do a lot of the other matches. So when I'm sitting here reading these dog shit fucking opinions, it's just blowing my mind and showing me that the people who are commenting aren't actually watching the matches of Counter-Strike that are unfolding in front of them. And this is when I go back and I look at the history of the games that went on, and I go, they got knocked out of this event, or they lost to this team, and they're losing to good teams. And they're losing to good teams in pretty close fashion, and they're having their classic G2 rounds that they've lost, which happened again at this event, even though they won it. They still had G2 rounds where I'm sitting there going, what the fuck was that? Like,
Yes.
What just happened? And they still managed to somehow win the event. And look, I'm not going to sit here and go, oh my God, the G2 supremacy, they're going to be the best team in the world now, no one can take. That's not the case. I think what you said there, Yanko, is spot on. The team with these type of players can win an event. And right now, we have a lot of teams who fall into that bucket. And that was the whole conversation going into the Rio Major as well, that there were so many teams on the radar who could potentially win that event, who could truly be a contender for it and pick up the trophy if they were playing the best Counter-Strike on that any given Sunday, which outsiders were at the Rio Major. And it's like, this is the period of Counter-Strike that we might find ourselves in now, where we do have, like, you look back at this year of CS, and sure, we had the phase dominance in the first 6 months, but you look outside of that, this second half of the year, we've had so many different names lift trophies. And I think that right there is the most telling point of where Counter-Strike is currently at. We just have a lot of really good teams. And then you get the guys who come and go, oh no, this team's weak and this team has this going on. It's like, man, we don't have a consistent season, right? Like all these teams don't make their roster changes at the same time, right? We don't just go right now and everybody just makes their roster changes and we start. That's not how this works, right? We're on this like constant rolling schedule where everybody's changing and chopping on their own accord when they think it's viable, when those trades are available to them. And then people look to downgrade, like degrade? Maybe that's the right word.
Yeah,
I don't know if the brain's working. But they look to pull down the achievements of teams who are winning in a certain time by saying that other teams are shit at the moment or they're weak at the moment. And this constant conversation it never stops. It's just perpetual bullshit. And it's too much for me. And that's why I just want to make sure we draw everybody back to the key point here of the Counter-Strike being played in the server. And I'm going to tell you this much, boys. I was so happy to see the M4A4. Just having that rifle more prevalent, it just felt more enjoyable to watch. It just felt juicier, like there was something to it.
I was asking the other guys because I like got this like weirdly I got these like weird feelings watching it because it was like I feel there were some games during like the A1 meta that we've had for the past year where I feel like that like felt like a really good game, but I can't really remember like a whole lot of like highlights from it, you know? Like I can't remember.
Right,
like,
yeah.
And now the A4 came out at this event back out, and I was like, it feels like there's like a lot more highlights coming in right now, like spray downs, like some of the classic things. I don't know. I might have just been imagining things. I felt like some of the older players as well were back to getting some highlights, and it seemed like they felt more comfortable just in the style of play with the M4 out. Is like more. It felt like more classic Counter-Strike that we've seen over the past 10 years versus the A1, which was like a little bit lurky, a little bit spammy, a little bit sneaky across the map. Like the A4 like felt like it brought Counter-Strike back into like, I don't know, a more familiar place to me.
I have a question because, you know, G2 had, I think the reason they won the tournament was really, really good T sides, like some really good calling from Hooksy, but also the team executed those calls well. He had good reads too. And also that JKS stepped up and had more impact. Just he had, you know, that's the JKS as I remember it when I had to play against him, right? Like, doesn't matter that he would get maybe 20 kills. It's not the amount of kills. It's like he would have this 1v2 or 1v3, like let's say even early in the half that just is like sets the tone, like wrecks your economy, right? Some of these crucial rounds, and he would just win some of these clutches that, you know, when you watch him do it, not that he makes it look easy, but it's just also, this is like what we're used to seeing from him. But those are like incredibly hard to pull off and incredibly impactful. So yeah, my question was going to be, do you think like people are playing, they're finding more success on the T side because the A1S nerf, or does it not have much to do with that? Because I mean, I watched games and stuff, but you know, some of them I don't watch them as closely, right? I just kind of, you know, as a viewer, but when you cast, you like pay more attention to it.
Yeah. I don't know, Jason, you obviously were the most eyes on with all of this.
Yeah.
Well, what's your take on that from Yank? I know I've got a couple of opinions on this earlier.
I mean, I think certainly it fucking helps a lot. I think, yeah, I got that sense as well. I don't know if I'd pin all of it down to the A1, but I think certainly it felt like teams were a lot more comfortable not having to play against the A1. And I mean, especially on like a map like Ancient that can be so spammy, like it felt like, you know, that was kind of taken away at different times. It was fun watching players kind of like players were like swapping between A1s and A4s, like between maps, and like mid-series they'd come back and switch to the other weapon as well. I wouldn't put it all on the A1, but certainly it felt like that has to be an alleviating factor as to why the T sides felt so much stronger.
You have I think there's like multiple different facets at how the T sides have probably been bolstered or could be bolstered in this environment, and one of them immediately, right, with the M4A4 being more expensive. Before, if you were to save knowing in the next round you were going to get the loss bonus of the 2,900, right, and 2 guys saved, well, you can immediately drop 2 A1Ss, and then you can have out 4 rifles immediately, but you don't get that luxury anymore. So I think one of the things we might see is more eco rounds on the CT side of if teams are being a bit more prevalent with the A4s, which I think will be the case, right? There was a bit of a conversation leading into the event on Twitter, Jason. I know that there was some pros who were getting involved in the conversation with you. And they were like, no, the A1S is going to be more popular. And I think outsiders had everybody using the A1S. But then throughout the course of the event, I know Striker was keeping track of it, and the A4 was definitely the more popular. And definitely looked like the more potent in a lot of these matches. It just seemed, without a doubt, the better of the two. Even though of the cost factor, it felt like it just had more output, more of that multi-frag potential that was going on.
Most of the oppers I noticed stayed on the A1S. And I'm assuming that's an economy reason to be able to drop it without having to spend as much money, even though it's not like any kind of super significant value. But I just noticed that most of the oppers were still on the A1S, and I was assuming it was primarily because of the drop situation.
Yeah, I think that could make sense. I liked Rain's take in he said something in an interview, right, where he was saying, right? Yeah, and that he thinks it's in a good spot. And I hope that we're able to get there and it doesn't just completely landslide in one direction, and people are changing depending on where they play on a map, and it does chop and change, because I think that makes for a cool dynamic and definitely cool conversation points. I think his justification on Nuke was like, yeah, he could be a bit more spammy outside through smokes, can make him a bit more of an annoyance to those smoke walls. And then in that matchup against G2, I'm pretty sure Nico, who was playing Yard, he was using the A4, right? So he's a bit more loud and boisterous about things, but Nico's the type of guy just to stand in the middle of warehouse outside and just go, fight me, you know? So not that Rain isn't that guy, but obviously a little bit of a different thought process there between the two of them. But we already saw the ramifications of that. I don't know about the AWP so much, right? I don't know. Was there many moments that you caught, Jason, where somebody was caught out of bullets, or
the only one I can really think of? The only one I can really think of, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it happened, but I think the only one I can really think of was that Dagster 1v4 on Anubis, where he only actually had 4 bullets when he got into the 1v4, and like he won it.
Kind of made it cooler, didn't it?
But you were also kind of sat there.
That's it.
Yeah, you were sat there, and you're like, if he misses any of these shots, like he just doesn't have the ammunition to actually win this clutch. So that was kind of cool, but I didn't notice that having too much of an impact. I think maybe there's probably a couple situations where that I might have just like not caught, where an opper had to go like a little bit passive more than he probably wanted to during a sight take to reload the weapon, and you don't get as many spams during the actual execute itself from the op firing through a smoke. I think it just kind of takes away a lot of the, like, you know, like Simple, when like Simple is a firm believer in the miss every shot you don't take. When he has like a smoke pop up in front of him, he's not afraid to like just fire off and no scope through it. I think it just kind of takes away a couple of those sorts of shots. And certainly, I mean, look, it's pretty cool. I didn't notice it having any kind of negative effect on the way the game was played, though. I think it's just oppers. That's an easy adjustment to just be more cognizant of the bullets you have, I think.
I think that's one that it seems like a massive like hamstring to AWPers, but it's going to be curious to see how it plays in. And like Mondesi was nuts. Like he was hitting everything, and it didn't seem like it affected him at all. And if it was going to affect any type of player, you would think it'd be him, because we talk about him being so quick. Well, I remember him at the start of the year, he'd take 4 shots before he'd hit one, right? Because he'd try and go for all these like crazy flicks, and then he'd eventually hit a shot. But it felt like for him, he was hitting absolutely everything. So this is one of those situations where it's going to have to take some time before we truly see the impacts of this, and it's never going to be immediate, right? Like, I think there was players who were experimenting with the AUGs as well as depending on what rifle they had. Yeah, so it's going to be, look, this is what's exciting about Counter-Strike, is when we have these patch changes, and they're not hugely major in the scheme of things, but they have a big effect on how people want to approach the game and the choices they have to make. And I think that's exactly what Valve intend to do with things like this. They want to give people more options and more choice, and force them to make these decisions. And I see the conversation, and it always crops up, and it's one that's been going on now ever since the introduction of, say, the USP and the A1S. People talking about having both of them available, but the idea that we're having this conversation now and it's something that analyst desks could talk about, or friends while they're playing matchmaking could, you kind of shitting on your mate who uses the A1S and you use the A4 and you're like, nah, mate, don't drop me that shit, drop me an org instead or something, right? Like it's adding different layers and different dimensions to the game here, which is probably what you'd want if you're a game developer, people to have to make choices while they are playing your game. And I like the way things are. I like the fact that people have to make a choice before they even get into the game, and making the wrong choice may affect them throughout the course of that match. And I know that there's a lot of people who don't agree with that sentiment at all, but I assume that they probably don't look at it from that standpoint. And if they do, then I'm sorry, but I don't know. I like it this way. I think it definitely adds more choice, which is cool in a game. That's what you're looking for, right? All the decisions that are to be made. They did make a weird tweet. Did you guys see that tweet where they were talking about having overtime, like penalty shootouts in the World Cup? Did you guys catch that?
I did.
Yeah, I saw it.
What do you make of that? Like, they could just be a bit of a piss take here, but like,
Oh, it's entirely a piss take.
Are you sure?
Yeah, even for Valve, I'm sure that's a piss take. They wouldn't do that.
All right. Do you want to bet?
Yeah. How much you want to put on it?
Well, I've already out of pocket $2,000 this year on the bet. I'm happy to go again.
Dude, there's no way.
Put
There's no way.
€1,000 on it.
They might. I would say maybe for like matchmaking overtime they do that. I would still doubt that, but it won't change for competitive.
Oh, I see Jason piled on. I didn't see that. He replied.
You like
Players walk
you like
back
that?
to back, walk for 5 seconds, opposite direction, revolvers only. Wow.
That's the way. That's the way real men settle it.
Probably not best to
I'll
give
read
them
the-
ideas.
I'll read the tweet for everybody in case our listeners missed it. But it says, if CSGO had World Cup overtime, if a match ends 15-15, players are separated into 5 1v1 arenas based on their position on the scoreboard. Top fragger versus top fragger, etc. Everyone spectates each 1v1 matchup. First team to 3 out of 5 wins the match. So you read that, and you sit here and you go back to Blast Pro Series. Remember when
the OG
they
one.
did that? Yeah, right. That was something that they did, and that was something which
That wasn't
I'll be
overtime
honest,
though. That was just their show match at the time, wasn't it? That wasn't like an overtime.
I think so.
Yeah.
No, that
but
was,
I think they wanted to. I think they wanted to
that
do it
was
for overtime, didn't
That
they?
was for like the third place or.
Oh yeah, the
it
third,
was for
the third place decider or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, and it had an extra 20K to it.
Yeah, they used
Yes.
they used that as a way to get like 2 more teams on the stage. So fans bought tickets.
Yeah, it was like a home team, or it was like a third team versus the team that the fans would vote for. So it was like
Yeah.
That's
for
right. Yeah.
Sao Paulo, when IBR is not going to make the final, a way to have them like kind of on the stage, and that's the only game, because you remember before it was in the arena, but it was 3 games going on at the same time, right? Like
Yeah.
6 teams were playing each other, so the main one was going in the arena, but the other 2 weren't.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that was awfully confusing because they were on other screens in the arena, right? They were all visible in the arena, but
Which was fun
there
because
was only,
if you're,
like,
let's
one
say,
main.
I think one time we were playing a main game against someone, but it was like either Astralis in Copenhagen or something like that, playing on a different
Side,
one, and then
yeah.
you just hear the crowd. They're not even watching the main screen, right? They focus more on the side screens and they're reacting to it, so it becomes a little bit distracting.
Yeah, that was funny. as
Hence
fuck.
why in Rio, the teams in the first 2 stages, they weren't on the stage playing, even though, you had the setup, they were playing backstage so that the crowd would affect them less. I'm sure they still heard it a little bit, but it would have been worse if they were on stage.
Yeah, well, look, on this overtime thing, right? The reason I think that they might do it is if you think about when you sign up for a matchmaking game now, right? When it pops up, it says how long the commitment for you to play a matchmaking game is, right? I think it says like 40 to 60 minutes or something along those lines, right? And that commitment to that amount of time, that's the developer telling the people who are playing their game how long they will be committed to this matchup for, right? So if you wanted to make sure that you had enough time to fit in a match before mum puts dinner on the table, you know how long you're going to be playing for. But if we use traditional overtime rules in the same way that we do in professional Counter-Strike matches, there's no asymmetry there. So that game could, in theory, go on forever. Like Counter-Strike Overtime could truly go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever until we die. Like that's how this could go. And I think that if you were Valve, you would want to. I don't know, how much satisfaction do you think there's in a draw? I wouldn't imagine there's an awful lot. There's probably a bit of satisfaction if you're the team who's getting bodied and then you bring it back to a 15-15 score and you go, thank fuck I didn't get the L. But I would imagine that you'd want people to have the satisfaction of looking for a W. And if one way of being able to present that in overtime is by doing something along these lines and adding something, I can see it having some fun merit. To me, it's not the purest form of Counter-Strike by any means. Like if this was to be a real thing, like let's humor this for a second. I would like it to be at least one traditional overtime, like extra time in football, before getting into something that's a little bit more, I would say, gimmicky.
Well, I don't think they'll add this time investment to the casual Counter-Strike.
We talked about this in Rio, but I don't think we did it with Valve. We were discussing different overtime formats, and we said, without a joke, that if it goes for more than two, like let's say 18-18, and if it's 21-21, at that point you do like a penalty shootout. Teams pick one player each, and they play like a map until I don't know which score, and that sort of decides it.
Yeah, I think
that's interesting.
I'm curious though. Yeah, but this is the thing,
because
right? We're looking at...
I think me or Jason said, because we were like joking, not joke, but before in CPL, if it after two overtimes, the third overtime would be played on a different map.
Yeah,
like which is I think like it's too much, right? But I can see this way of sort of making it more spicy, making it more interesting, right? Like imagine also, you have whatever. Simple versus Ivo, Nico versus Exile, like 1v1, first to whatever, 10 to determine who wins in the end.
It's kind of hype, right? Like I think that a lot of people probably, like especially players, probably wouldn't like it immediately because it's not.
Players wouldn't like anything immediately. Like, can we just say that out loud? So
no, you're right.
I think that goes without a doubt, right? Like, except giving them more chances to lose and stay in the tournament, they'll always be down for that.
Yeah, they love that. Uh-huh.
They definitely love that. That's one of their favorites. That's their Christmas present every year, I think. They are Santa to put that one under the tree. How many times? That's with Swiss. That's where that was like, okay, we'll give them another opportunity, shall we? You can have an extra chance now to make sure you're not knocked out of the tournament. But something like this, it could be a bit of fun, especially if you were to do it after a certain amount of traditional overtimes, right? It's like, yeah, okay, this is getting a little bit silly now because you're getting so deep. You're getting so deep into Counter-Strike at that point when you're playing so many overtimes and there's so much cash on the line. You've already played 30 rounds in regulation, then you play another 6 rounds and you still aren't separated. And I know that the most hype games of Counter-Strike tend to happen when we're fucking 3 overtimes deep on Inferno and people are actually going for clutches and it's all going nuts. But at the same time, I don't know. I think this is something because we've discussed this a lot before, right? Like formats of Counter-Strike, MR12, overtime rules, cash, blah 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 blah. Like something has to change at some point, right? And if it was like, okay, we still got MR15, we still do traditional Counter-Strike rules as it is right now. We adjust the overtime at some point, right? So first overtime or first 2 overtimes are traditional, and then after that, it can be something different. Like we've already played so many rounds of CS at that point that the further we go into that, the closer the two teams are, like statistically speaking, right? Because you play more rounds and it's fewer rounds that are separating the two. So they're just games. The separating factor for the two teams just becomes closer and closer. So Jason, do you want to bet or should we wait until we're both a little bit less tired?
Dude, I'll bet right now.
All right.
I don't need to get rid of jet lag. We'll bet at dinner.
Okay.
We'll bet at dinner.
Okay, I was going to put another €1,000. I'm going to be a poor man soon. Business class flights and €1,000 bets.
You got to pay for upgrades. A nice Korean barbecue dinner next year.
Okay, all right, fine. I guess we'll have to do that in the States. I don't know where we can find nice Korean barbecue other than Korea and America. So, all right, fine. All right, I think that they'll add something like that.
Are you
I
giving
don't
a time limit, like 3 months?
3 months. I was going to go with a year.
A year, okay. We can do a year.
A year. Well, because we've got to work with valve time, right?
True.
So, we got to work in valve time here. Valve time could be the one.
I'll give it a
What's
year.
this? Okay.
Christmas
All right,
2023 is when this will be decided. We're going to forget
Beautiful.
about this bet at some point, for sure.
They'll remind us. The internet never forgets. They're like elephants.
True.
Elephants never forget. I was watching Indiana Jones on the plane, and he was riding an elephant.
Which one?
I think it was the third movie.
Okay.
Is it the third one?
I don't think he
remember
rides an
the-
elephant in the third one.
Which one's the third one? I'm gonna Google
the one with
Indiana
Sean
Jones
Connery.
movies. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Raiders of the Lost
Then
Ark is
that's-
the
I don't-
first one. Temple of Doom is the second one. I can't.
Is Temple of Doom the one where he's in India?
Is that India? I don't remember. I don't remember exactly.
They
what
get.
country
He's in.
this was.
He starts in China. It starts with
Eats
the whole
the monkey
musical thing.
brains.
Yeah, that must be. Yeah, is that Temple of Doom?
Yeah,
That
well, I
must
mean,
be
you know Temple of Doom. It's the one where he like goes in and like gets like fucking hypnotized by eating the heart or some bullshit and turns into like the cult follower for a second there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I didn't finish the film. We were landing, so I got in most of it. Yeah, we had the part where they jumped out of the airplane and it crashed, and then they're in a boat. They're in this inflatable yellow like dinghy in the air.
Sure.
And then they're going down a mountain covered in snow, and then they end up in a river, and then they end up in India. So yeah, they I guess they're on the border of China and India, which is the thing. My geography is not great, but I learned something from that movie. Okay,
There's a new
where was
Indiana
I?
Jones
Where were
coming
we?
out in 2023. Just throwing that one out there.
With Harrison Ford?
Yeah,
He's still going.
he's still going, man. I love it.
How old is he now?
He's an old boy, but
He's gonna be deep in his 70s, right?
he just finished filming the prequel to Yellowstone. He's good. He was born in 42, so he's 80.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
Yep,
I like
He's from Chicago.
my man.
those
Wow.
like Tom Clancy's basically, right, where he's like the Jack Ryan, the analyst, like from the late 80s, early 90s,
Oh yeah,
or the one where he's like the president on the plane.
That
Obviously,
one's
The
great.
Fugitive's amazing. On every doghouse.
he's Air Force One.
hen
Air
house
Force
in
One
the-
is when he's the president.
I love Tommy Lee Jones, man. He's
His
great.
current wife is 22 years younger. He's had a
Calista
couple of
Flockhart,
upgrades
right?
throughout his
Still
life.
old, of course,
Yeah,
but
he's had
yeah.
a couple.
Yeah.
Well, just still 20 as an 80-year-old man having a 58-year-old wife, he's done all right there. He's had a couple of upgrades here across the years.
Mate,
He's chopped and changed.
He's been like the
times.
sexiest man of the year, like Time sexiest man of the year, like 3 times, hasn't he? Dude's just killing
He
it.
feels like does it feel like though like he would just be like a grumpy old man?
Oh, he is a grumpy
Like he
old
kind
man.
of gives off that demeanor.
Yeah, for sure. But like he's funny as fuck.
Yeah.
Did you see like when they asked him like when the new Star Wars trilogy started? They were like, because I don't think he's a huge fan of playing Han Solo. And they were just like, why did you decide to come back and make this? And he just like was like, money. He's like got to that no fucks given phase of his life where he's like, yeah, I didn't want to do it, but they paid me a shit ton of money, like millions and
Yeah.
millions of dollars.
I guess if the money's right,
Yeah,
you know,
fair play.
we've all got, everyone's got that kind of. This actually, it is an old people thing, because when I was just getting dinner in Nando's, like they've changed it here in Oz at Nando's, like they want you to kind of sit down at the table, scan a QR code, and order without talking to anybody. And this old woman, she would have been, I don't know, fucking 60. She walked in and they were like, oh yeah, you know, just this. She's got, I don't want to do that. I was like, okay. One of those classic old people who just like fucking think they're above everything else
Yeah,
because
just
they're old.
don't
That's what
care.
my grandma was like. That's what my grandma was like. She was like, no, I don't have to do that because I'm old. I was like, fair enough, grandma. Can't argue with that. You're fucking 75. You can do whatever you want. You can. That's fine. That's fine. You can do it. If that's what happens when you get old, you can just do whatever you want and no one can do shit. That seems pretty good.
No, it's cool.
I can't wait to get
I
old.
know. I'm
then.
excited to get old. A lot of people are afraid of it. I'm ready. I'm ready to get old and stop giving a fuck.
You're way older in your heart, Jason. is What you're trying
Yeah,
to say.
exactly.
Well,
We feel older than we are, I guess. Yes.
someone who's not old,
I derailed us.
the
a bit
current
here. Should we go back to
MVP
the
of last
Counter-Strike?
World Finals, Monesi.
Oh, little 17-year-old.
What a fucking game he's had against outsiders. Jesus Christ.
Dude, he was so good at this event.
I
He
feel
was
like-
so good.
Kind of have to talk about that, even though it pains me. Outsiders bombing out last place.
Oh yeah, you did pick him.
But, well, I don't know. I thought I remember saying they were going to have a good tournament. I think I distinctly said they're not going to bomb out. Of course, they end up bombing out. but they lose to the two teams that were in the final for one, which I don't know. I don't even really want to give them that excuse because in the game against Liquid, right, they win the first map, then Anubis, which they picked, they lose
Oh, yeah, that was
16-8. Then
brave.
Mirage, which was their bread and butter at the major, they lose 16-8 as well. And then against G2, obviously, it was just abysmal, but that was also it's 16-2, 16-1, 16-12, 16-1, not winning one round on T side of Mirage, which was their pick again. But that's where Monacy had, like, over the course of the series, plus 36 kills, 1.94 rating. So he truly had himself a game. But yeah, I think it's also the fact that they had terrible starts almost every game, like pretty much every half. If you look, I think I actually looked at the teams, FTU, pistol rounds, right? So they were like 3-7 in pistols, but they didn't convert a single one of their pistols. So out of like 10 halves, they had maybe one good start because one of the pistols that they lost, they won the second round, and that's it, right? And you combine that, and obviously on an individual level, they weren't really as sharp as they were, and also just their opponents were sharper, and that was it. They didn't really show up.
But this is the thing, like this is why, and this one here, maybe I can understand a little bit more with the knee jerk kind of reaction and all the questioning of their run at the major, right? Because first of all, people want to do the pylon on Rio, right? That's adamant. But then on top of that, it's because these are the names which they didn't have to play, right? A lot of these teams that they were fortunate enough, G2 didn't even qualify, right? We all know that. But like a bunch of these names, they weren't in their path on the way there. So this makes them have their run questioned a lot more with the major that they won not that long ago, right? So this is where an event like this actually comes back to hurt them as opposed to help them, right? And I think that the interview with Nico, if I remember, now this is not verbatim, I don't want anybody to think that I'm quoting him, it's just a sentiment of it here, but they asked Nico what he thought about it, and I think it was like, well, if I just won the major and I lost this, I wouldn't care. Like I think that was pretty much like...
Yeah.
What he was getting across. And I think we can probably all see that and agree with that sentiment, right? In the sense that, yeah, you just won the major, you just won the biggest event in Counter-Strike, and now you come here and you lose this. Okay, sure, like that's not the result you were looking for. You definitely wanted to come in here and show some good CS, but at the end of the day, you won the fucking major. Like that trumps everything else in the Counter-Strike world. And I think that there's no way that outsiders sit there and they go, man, like, yeah, they don't have that mentality. They don't go into Christmas thinking, yeah, this is fine. Like, they definitely go, fuck, this sucks, and we still want to win. But it's still something that they can move past, right? It's not the end of the team.
Oh, absolutely, and I think in one of those ways that we always used to talk about, it's like a good thing, in a sense that they more or less got crushed, right? Because I don't think they ever fell into that false sense of security that, oh yes, we're now owning it. I think they knew it was going to be difficult, right? Like it's going to be a hard tournament to win a lot of good teams. But I think they were also motivated because they hear the same things we're hearing, right? That people are trying to discredit their win and say that, they didn't play anyone good and so on. And I'm sure they had this motivation to prove people wrong about that and show them they can win against any team. It didn't happen, but I think they're a team that's just going to make them like work more and work harder and be even more motivated for next year for tournaments to come. And, I think for them it's also been a complicated year, right? With all the things about their org and also the living situation and whatnot, right? I think all of the teams from the CIS region, I think they were all just looking forward to the year being over, so to speak, and just being able to kind of focus on, obviously, nothing for a while, just like taking time off and relaxing, but also planning out next year. You heard it from Simple as well, talking about, I didn't know that they only had like 1 or 2 boot camps this year, right? I somehow felt like they would have had more, or that wouldn't have been, that it wouldn't have been an issue for them, but apparently it was. And he said he thinks that's one of the main reasons why they didn't win more trophies, because boot camp is where you do your best work and do the best preparation and can be the most efficient with your practice, and they just didn't have that. So for me, it's not really too surprising that they didn't make it too far.
Also,
at the
we have
World
to remember
Finals.
too, the major winners have only in the entire history of the majors, the major winner has only ever won the following event that they played in once. Like it's just
Really? Wow.
it was Navi 2021. Like there's just like a hangover effect that we've always kind of discussed, and I think we kind of maybe it slipped our minds a little bit because outsiders they didn't play since Rio. These were their first matches since Rio. They had quite a long break, so I mean, I don't know. I again, it's like the G2 thing. I'm not going to judge outsiders and sit here and like cast this big like hindsight saying like, yeah, they were a fluke at the major just because they lost this or anything like that. And it's just a hard thing to follow up the major with a victory because so much energy goes into the major. And yeah, just historically, it just doesn't happen. So this wasn't out of the norm in any way.
I am curious to see though, right? And something key that you mentioned here about them not playing anything between. They obviously would have been practicing on the new patch, but I mentioned they all stayed on the A1S. I'm curious to see if that stays the case when we do see them get back in the server, if any of them move into the A4. And then on top of that, they picked Anubis in that opening game. And look, I have respect for them doing that because Dust 2 was one of their stronger maps, or definitely a map that they liked, right? So wanting to try and fill that gap in the map pool, if you pick that early, you can put the fear of God and everybody else with it. So maybe teams are thinking, oh shit, maybe we have to ban this first phase. I know James, some people were quoting some stuff that James was saying about that map before the tournament, about him like thinking he's cracked it, and they're going to be pretty good on Anubis. Once again, this is not a direct quote; it's just something along these lines. But and that obviously doesn't age fantastically well there. But I like teams when they have the confidence to be able to pick the new map and get stuck into it, especially with Anubis rep, because it feels like it's been very welcomed. Like it didn't feel like we knew that was going to be the case, that a lot of teams who were at this event, I think it was 7 out of the 8, and then even Heroic ended up playing it as well, I think, or not banning it at least. And it was one of these situations where the map seems, look, you see people saying it's a pretty simple layout, and it feels like it's a map that's going to be brought across and embraced, I would say, pretty quickly. It was played a total of 5 times. We were having a discussion, I think, for a couple of shows about how many times we thought I got very fortunate.
Yeah, I was way off. I said it was like 2.5, right? I said it's going to be played 2 times, and it was like way more. It was.
I haven't heard of players.
5 on the nose.
Only 2 series it wasn't in the pool, right? Like only 2 series happened where it was like banned, because there were a couple of series that it was a 3rd map, but it didn't get to a 3rd. Something like that. It was
I haven't heard a player say something negative about it, especially once the clipping was fixed. That might have been the only thing, but as the way it like plays out and as the way the map works, I've heard no like significant complaints about like the foundation of the map in any way.
I think it's a really cool map. Like I think that it has a lot of interesting little elements to it, and I can't wait to see more of it played, because getting to see some of the approaches from the teams on the map, and I think FaZe were rocking double orbs on the CT side. I think that's something that's always going to be really potent early, while teams are still working out how the defaults are meant to run, or what are the actual key choke points, what are the real pressure points that we want to be a bit of a nuisance on. You could see how teams were really using middle on the T side to stifle the rotations and force players to head back through CT spawn through that whole beach area, which then slows out those rotates. It is a lot of curious little factors which we don't even get answered after 5 maps of Counter-Strike, right? Like, it's going to take a while before the meta really starts to define itself here. But it was good just to see, this is the bit that I like, those creative juices that those teams have and how that they then get unleashed within the server. So it was fun to watch. I didn't get to watch all the games because I was traveling on one of the days, or I guess it was 2 of the days. But what I did catch, it was great to see. Like I think that the I don't know. Well, I don't know. I think that eventually it'll probably drop back into one of these situations where, early, faster Counter-Strike is going to work, right? On a map like, well, because teams don't know exactly like what they need to do with all their protocol utility, or their timing still might be a little bit off, and teams can punish that. And this is where, at the moment, you get to see. I remember one of these phase rounds, like Twist just runs into B and just bops 3 people, but it's just his raw mechanical ability. Like his jiggles aren't perfect, because they can't be. He hasn't been playing Anubis for as long as he's playing an Inferno or a Mirage or a Nuke or something like that. It's a map with newer angles, so you just get to see their raw ability unleashed in the server, like that Degster clutch that you mentioned, right? Like that's a situation that could have been played a little bit better on the other side of the server, but that's exactly the point, is that this new territory and teams aren't so well refined, and if you in that moment can capitalize, like that's exactly what Counter-Strike's all about. Like that was a sick round from Degster. So I think that's what we'll get early, a bit more variance in the play, some quicker rounds, some slower rounds, mix up on the side, so they're going to be hitting some big clutches, different approaches of strategy, and all of that is great. That's a breath of fresh air, and I think that's a testament to having more good maps added on a frequent basis. And if it was every year and it was a map like Anubis, that'd be fucking sick.
And you can actually take that in the other direction too, because I think I saw a lot of players like experimenting with certain things and like finding out in real time in officials that certain setups and plays and positions probably weren't as strong as they wanted. Like at the start of the event, Shush was playing a position at the A bomb site where he was kind of like half boosted with like or half up on a box by Fountain to like have like a sliver gap towards A main, and he would just have a smoke in his hand. And the whole thing was like when he sees one or when he gets shot at, he just deploys the smoke, bounces it off the wall, and it plumes perfectly. But he used it like twice, and every time he got spotted, they shot him down to like 40 HP. And then he like never went back to it. Like the next time they played it, he didn't go back to it because it was like, yeah, this actually maybe worked in practice one day in like the limited practice that they had on the map, maybe like 1 or 2 scrims. But in like the real time match, this team just found a way to get around it or make it a position that really wasn't all that strong and all that good. So you had to kind of adjust on the fly. So I think just as many positions as were like strong, and just as many plays that were made that won't be down the road. I mean, we saw some people get exposed with their initial idea of what would be good. I know Liquid talked about that against FaZe, like, yeah, we learned actually a lot from this loss because we realized some of the things we wanted to do and we're trying to do, we're getting exposed and weren't as strong as we thought. And then they came back in Anubis. I think they smashed the next opponent on it. So yeah, it's like watching the players learn in real time. I think too, I would imagine as well, like ops are just going to be strong on this map until actually probably not going into 2023 when there's more practice time. But I have to imagine ops always start out very strong on maps before teams really know like the really strong, solid flashbangs that they find to take away angles, and you don't know which angles the opper is going to be at. So like FaZe running that double op setup, I don't think we'd see that too frequently, going into next year. But yeah, I think just like Degster in his first game on this map was like mental with the AWP, because people didn't know how to counter him, how to force him out of positions. He just always held an angle and always got a first kill and then always moved. But that's gonna lessen as time goes on as well.
I think also what we had, but I think Ancient was added before IEM Summer. Like it was closer to the tournament, maybe. I don't know if you remember better, Chad. I think there was like less time to practice on it. Like it was closer to the tournament that the update happened. But regardless, I was going to say that at least it felt on a couple of games I've seen on Anubis in this tournament that there weren't as... You remember in Ancient, initially, there were so many multi-kills on all the time on the CT side. Remember Madden, and he always had like 40 kills on Ancient. We were jogging around calling him the Ancient One because he was having like insane games on the map, and it was mostly because, he's a good sprayer, and then, people don't know which angles really to shoulder peek yet or anything, so just playing some off angles and spraying people down was really easy. But you feel like on Anubis, players were more prepared, so that didn't happen as much as maybe I expected it initially.
I think as well, it just feels more like a Counter-Strike map. Like I like Ancient, and I even though I guess as well we will talk about this tonight, is the update that they did to Ancient. Valve released, they fixed that clipping you mentioned before, Jason, and as well they changed Ancient with the CT spawns. They made CT spawn on Ancient much bigger. They brought that back, and then they made the sight lines on the B bomb site a lot longer by shrinking down a couple of things, or turning that cubby on the site that a lot of people play on with a wooden spam, made that almost non-existent now. So there was some significant changes to Ancient that are going to change how that map plays out a lot. But Anubis, and this is we touched on this previously as well. And this is why I don't think that it's going to have too many updates other than maybe the clipping issues and whatnot. But it's a map that was play tested significantly. It had already been in the game as far as matchmaking is concerned before, and map core and all this, that, and the other. So it had already had some overhauls on different elements of the map. And that's why I think that coming straight in, this makes a lot of sense. Whereas Valve adding Ancient and Vertigo, they just kind of got added into the game, and they never really went through a rigorous process that anybody was too much of a caretaker from, because we know how Valve operates. They're just going to wait for the statistics that are going to come through the matchmaking system to go, oh, we should maybe change this. But a mapper who's specifically working on a map and then having it tested throughout the Faceit hubs or whatever way they want to get it tested are going to change things pretty quickly, right? They're going to see, oh, this isn't how I intended this to go, or this could be better to do it this way, or oh yeah, this is a good bit of feedback. They're going to take that feedback in a different way than what Valve are. So I think that's another key factor as to why Anubis just felt nice, because it felt like it was positively received across the board. If you're saying, Jason, the players, no one said anything negative, I didn't see too much stuff from the people at home that felt negative. And maybe the color palette has something to do with that as well. We know that a lot of Counter-Strike fans love a good orange
green
map.
Isn't enjoyed. We've
No, they don't like green, do they?
No.
They don't like green at all.
They
do like orange.
I actually think the Ancient games were super fun to cast as well. Like it had some like really cool action sequences, and like the bomb site takes are fun. The clutches have been interesting as well. I think it played really well for commentary purposes.
Ancient or Anubis?
Anubis. Did I say Ancient?
Oh, okay, yeah. You did. But I thought you meant Anubis.
Yeah, I did mean Anubis.
Yeah, you were casted with Harry, mate.
Yeah, as a throwback to the old Oakland days.
The Oakland days. That was fun to get old Harry out there, getting him in the thick of things, taking him out of the DayZ servers with me and putting him over there casting with you. I kind of got robbed my last couple of days of gaming with Harry. It just disappeared.
Yeah, that's selfish of me.
It was a good
Shame
cause,
on
I
you.
guess. He's always having fun.
Yeah,
old Harry.
he's
always got a big smile on his face.
Yeah, he is like he's just like a goofball, man. He was happy to be there. We had a lot of fun. I think he was pretty jet lagged when he first arrived. I don't know why. I was definitely like jet lagged and sleep deprived, and like our first like 2 days was just like just having a good time, getting used to casting with each other. He's come a long way. It was kind of a fun experience seeing where he'd come from like what 2017 or 2018 or whatever that Oakland was.
I think the thing is that, like, and this is something which I don't really remind myself of often enough, and you brought it up before, Yanko, with the age of Monacy, but like Harry's a baby as well. Like him and Hugo, they're not old, man. Like they're kids. Harry's 24.
Yeah, that's wild.
Right? Like 24. Like they're not. And yeah, you're right. 2017. Like you have to just think.
He was 19.
Right? You know, like it's wild. It's wild to think like, and obviously the same thing has happened with us. Like we've grown up throughout Counter-Strike, but you kind of forget a little bit that there is this void of a gap, and how people are kind of becoming themselves in front of our eyes here, which is great. Like I kind of had that realization with Justin, right, this year, like seeing him, he's a man now, you know, like he's 27 years of age, like he's changed a lot back when I was playing with him when he was 18.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're talking about a decade's worth of time right now of having this guy on the screen and knowing him and seeing him chop and change a lot there. So yeah, it's something that I don't take into a lot of consideration, but yeah, you look at, I'm on his wiki right now, I'm on Harry's wiki right now, and there's a picture of him at the very bottom. It's where he's casting ESL UK Premiership, and he looks like a completely different kid. This is in 2016. He looks like a completely different human being. It's quite funny.
Yeah,
it's quite funny to go back in time and check all that out.
Someone asked me at the event, I forget who it was. I think it was like maybe a journalist, or maybe just like some business guy that I talked to briefly. I mean, he was just asking me if the players, as they like get more popular and famous, like build some kind of like an ego, if they get like ahead of themselves. And I was like, I mean, yeah, probably, but also most of the players that are in the scene, like we've all, like the casters have known them since they were like children. Like we've known them since they were like 19 years old and coming into their first team. We've been casting them for like 6 years. So like we have this like relationship with them like through the years. So we don't get to see that like side of the ego, right? Because they don't really give it to us all that much. Just because we've known them for so long and we've seen the rise of them as humans in their careers. So it's kind of a funny position to be in.
But honestly, for sure, Yeah, go Chad.
No, I was just gonna. I was just gonna add nothing there. So if you got something to actually report, Yanko,
I was just gonna
I
start
think
saying
you-
things.
I was just going to start talking. No, for me, like honestly, I've been saying it this whole year. Is definitely been the most fun player to watch. I think without a doubt, especially early on, right? Because you weren't used really to watching him play and whatnot, so it was all new. But yeah, he's just like so fast, so quick, so good, and it seems from the outside that really he's not like arrogant at all, and he's not developing it. He's just trying to get better every day and help his team win. And obviously, as a young player, there's going to be frustrations probably when he's having a bad game and feels like he's let the team down and whatnot. But I think he has plenty of other guys on that team to help him with that. I'm glad they brought the mental coach,
Edward.
Edward, but also I mean Nico as a more experienced player. I know he has sort of realized, not just realized, but wants to take more of a like not leadership role in terms of in-game, but just more of a like outside of the game, and just be set more of an example to whether it's the younger players or other players on the team, and kind of be that rock really when things are not going great in a game, right? That people still have good energy and a good approach, and I think they've had that in this tournament. I mean, they had the first series of the tournament where they fell apart. They were supposed to, like they could have beaten FaZe 2-0, right? But they lose in overtime. The game kind of slips through their hands, and then they just fall apart on the third map. It could also be that their ancient sucks, right? I mean, I don't think they ever played it after that series in the tournament, but it felt also a little bit of a mental thing. And it looked like in the Vitality series it might happen again. I even tweeted something along the lines of that. But actually, they were still able to bounce back on the third map and close out the series against Vitality pretty comfortably, all things considered, on Anubis after being down 8-7 and having to win the game on the T side, which wasn't an issue for them this whole tournament. I mean, it was really, really good. It was close to 60% round win percentage on T side, and even while you were watching the games, you could tell. I mean, the FaZe Inferno thing, like that was just nuts to me. Really, how they managed to pull that comeback off against a team like FaZe, winning 12 rounds on the T side of Inferno. I mean, FaZe considered maybe even the best Inferno team in the world, definitely up there in the top 2 or 3. So it's just so hard, because you need to understand, when you need to win so many rounds on the T side, that the CTs also know that, and they know that they can take risks and gambles and even some blind stacks or some timing pushes, because the consequences aren't as big because they have more rounds to play with. And also they're not going to go for every single retake that's like a 3v3 on B or something like that, because they understand they just need a couple of rounds. They don't need to go for it. So you have to win. They won 12-2. I think out of those 12, probably 8 were gun rounds, something along that. That's just like my initial feeling, right? And it's so hard to keep getting those correct reads time and time again, to not go into a stack and it wasn't like that Hooksy gambled correctly and it was like, let's go A. No, there was like players being sent to gather information, right? And then based off of their contact and what information they get, a call was being made. So a lot of it like made sense, and it was just really, really good Counter-Strike. And obviously the players played well. A couple of always, if you're going to win games like that and have big comebacks, there's going to be individual rounds too that players bail you out of a couple of bad spots. But I mean, that's just how Counter-Strike is. That's not a random thing that happened. Every game has that. Every championship run has that.
Yeah, I think we can definitely, everyone can think of a few tournaments with the team that their team that won and have those type of moments. And there's something you said there, Yanko, that I wouldn't mind sinking a moment of time into. You said that like one of the most fun players to watch of the year being Monacy, right? I'm trying to think who else kind of fits into like a top 5. It doesn't have to be ordered for me in that type of like who was just fun. Patsy's a good call. I was going to say Dexter as well.
Yeah, Dexter's a fun guy to watch.
True.
I like Patsy.
I think like Pat, yeah, but those two names definitely play very exciting CS. And then I was also going to say Twists. I don't know if Twist is necessarily like fun in the same way that those other three names kind of fit the bill. But like when Twist has a round, like it is, Twist is like fucking pure impact
It's
for
so
me, man.
crisp,
I love watching
like,
this
as
kid
well.
play.
When when he's
good.
on, like his aim is like so crisp. It just looks so nice. Like you're like I could never do this, but I appreciate that he's able to make it look this easy.
He's one of my I think he is my favorite player to watch. Like for someone of his age, isn't he he's only 21, right? I think Twist is still only like 21 years
23.
of age. Like maybe he's 22
23.
now. I'm having a look.
23.
He's 23. Why did I fucking think he was 21? I don't know. Okay, 23. Still pretty close.
I mean, he's still young.
But okay, he's 23. I took him down a couple of years there. But just to watch him play CS, he looks like, well, I guess he is because of his time at Liquid. But he's a seasoned vet. Like he just the stuff that he does in the server, like it's fucking wild. I wonder where he's going to be in HLTV's top 20 this year. I don't know how high up he's going to possibly be. But for me, when I think about the tournaments where FaZe has done well, there's always like a crazy twist round, like something that he's done that's just been fucking hugely impactful throughout the year. He always seems to be this guy that steps up.
Yeah, he's an underrated clutcher for sure. But you know what's wild about him, because I looked this up. Let me find it. He like doesn't have, for as good as he is and as impactful as he is and how like good his aim is and everything, he's only got 2 MVP awards in his entire career.
Okay.
Like, doesn't that seem a little crazy?
Were they on with Liquid?
Yeah, it was Sydney in 2019 to start the Grand Slam run, and then ESL New York 2018, which is the one they lost to Mouse in the grand finals.
Oh, and he looks like he hates his life in the picture.
Yeah. Like,
Holy shit.
2 MVPs, which is like mental to me that he hasn't gotten more than that in his career.
Well, when Simple and Device are out collecting most of them,
True,
I guess
yeah.
Well,
you
here's
take
the
ones you
thing,
can.
like Liquid hasn't really won that many tournaments. I mean, outside of their Grand Slam run, I mean, how many tournaments did they win?
True.
Big ones. I can't even really
That's a
remember.
good point.
Well, the last one
Right.
that they had won, it was a storyline of this event, right? Because of the final. The last one that Liquid had won of a big event was 2019, back when that run was. And I think that they juxtaposed that to G2's last big event win, which was 2017, right?
Yeah.
Which is when the team was all French. I think that was what was on Reddit, something along those lines. So, yeah, it's been a while for Liquid. It's been a while between drinks.
Yeah, so that's why
That's for
also
sure.
I thought that that's maybe a bit underrated storyline or fact about Liquid when it comes to talking about the grand final. Like I didn't have really a lot of doubt that G2, I don't want to say was the favorite, but I wouldn't have given like an experience edge to Liquid. Why? Because even if they have more experienced players, those are players who outside of that one run haven't won that many finals. Like I mean, they've usually been the punching bag for Astralis. Right, so yeah, that
True.
one run was great, but that was just how many? But that was a 2-month period, right?
63 days, I think.
So
63
yeah,
days.
exactly. I know we know the number of days, but so that was like strange, and yeah, for Twist, it's also because Brocky was the MVP of Katowice, right? Rain was obviously the MVP at the major, and I don't know who was at Pro League, maybe Robs.
At Pro League.
Oh.
Oh, the Pro League they won?
The one,
The one in Dusseldorf.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
don't
can't remember who it was, but yeah. So also for FaZe, such a weird story. I mean, they've had obviously the fall finals were close, and here they end up losing to G2, who won the whole event and was playing really good CS, right? So it wasn't like they were terrible in the second half of the year, but they didn't win a single event. For me, they're still team of the year for this year. Winning a major in Katowice and Cologne,
they have to be.
That has to be enough, right? But it's also so like just tells you about where we are right now. Ever since, you look at the Antwerp major, every single big tournament after that, a different team won. Well, from Dallas, I guess. Dallas fall finals, Cologne, and so on. It was a different team every time.
Yeah, so Dallas was Cloud9, then it was Navi, then it was FaZe at Cologne, then it was... who the fuck?
Vitality,
Vitality
won
Pro
Pro
League.
Outsiders, the major.
Heroic. Yeah, Heroic at fall finals, and then G2 to cap off the year.
Yeah.
It's a big spread. It is a big spread, but it's a lot of the names that I think were, at least pre-Rio, were in that conversation anyway, right? So, look, The phase one, because they still had like deep-ish runs at some of these events, I think that helped salvage how bad it could have been. Because if it was just like the major, if they'd bombed out, close to last place in all the events to cap out the year from the major onwards, then yeah, okay. But I think the thing is, Counter-Strike at the moment is seeming very, very competitive, and this is even with some of the bigger names like Navi clearly having personnel issues, that are holding them back from being a top dog, and there's still a team that can come in. But watching them play, we've jumped through so many teams right here for a second, but I guess we can pick one and kind of dig a bit more into. But watching Navi play, it didn't look like Navi. I was like, this isn't right. Like, this is not the team that, I come in and I go, okay, these guys can be top 3 at any given event just because the names in the server. It finally looked like they had been like battered and broken a little bit, and I was like, yikes, this is not good.
When they got knocked out, I was like, thank God. I didn't want to watch that team anymore. I was like, just get them on a break. Just give them time off. They're so fried. You can just tell by talking to them at events and as you said, it's like bleeding into the server where you can't even tell anything. Bro, I felt so bad for NPL. Like, to get subbed in on the third and deciding map in that series is like, it's so insane.
What did he get, like 5 kills?
Yeah, he should have never been put. And SDY was having a good series up to that. Well, I mean, not anything like crazy, but he was delivering in his roles. He was getting solid double kills. He was having really impactful rounds. And then to take him out as well, I thought was so crazy. I think that was a massive misstep from Blade, from Navi to sub him in just for the third map. I know it was like predetermined, but I don't know how you reasonably make that decision to bring him in for the third map in an elimination game with the stakes the way they were. Like, and also, in somewhat of maybe a defense, I don't know what Blast rules are on the substitutes. I don't know if they had to like submit it before the series began and they were just like locked into subbing him in. But man, if you could have made a different choice right before that third map, 100% I think you keep SDY in. Because even up to that point, NPL had only played Inferno games. That was his first official game on Mirage with Navi. I just thought it was crazy to put him in a quarterfinal match.
Yeah, but it's like trial by fire for the sink or swim type situation.
They went through a similar thing with Bit though, right? Like, he was also struggling initially, right, when he was just playing one map or a couple of maps and so on. And I think, to give the opposing argument, I think it was also because they just, were kind of trying to get done and realize that chances for them winning this tournament aren't really that great. That then, even if he comes in and has a bad tournament, it's just important that he has that first experience, sort of, right? That he goes through that trial by fire, and that I'm sure that he was let know that this performance at this tournament isn't going to determine, right, like, his status within the team. That if he has a terrible tournament, they're gonna give up on him, right? Sure, they want to see a little bit here and there how he's going to perform. And I think Simple even said after they were out that they were going to like keep him on, right? Like, whether that's going to be as a 6th player and get some more chances, but he said that he was going to remain with the team in some capacity. No.
Well, if Blast will be the first event of next year, right? So they will be able to do this 6-man thing again if they would like to at Blast, where they'll play the group stage. I don't know what the format's going to be, if Blast is going to change it or not, but they'll definitely have some matches there where they can get some more official work in with him before Katowice, right? Because I think that's the first big event of the year, Katowice, and then it goes straight into Pro League after that. So for the ESL events, I don't think they'll be able to do the 6-man thing the same way they can for Blast, right? Is it? Or actually, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think ESL operate in the same way with the 6-man rule. I think it's just Blast, right? I really don't think ESL do it in the same facet.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the 6-man rule, to be completely honest with you. I don't know how the substitute works, what that exactly is. I would assume ESL. It wouldn't be that hard of a thing to adopt it for ESL.
Yeah, but the thing is, do you even want to do it? Because I know Blast use it as it's a bit of a, I don't want to say gimmick, but at this point, I don't mind that their circuit is different and that they do things a little bit different. That's fine. I'm happy to just go for that ride, right? But I'm going to call a spade a spade. So the fact that they do it, I think that it's curious. I think that it's because it's mainly partner teams as well, right? So this is something where If the partner teams want it, then who are Blast to say no? And if these teams want to try and work things out at the Blast events with these players, then that's their prerogative, right? That's up to them. So I don't have any qualms with it. And if we see more of it, then sure. I just think like the placement of it. Obviously, we know where Navi are looking. They're looking at the next big tournament. They're looking at getting the roster in line for next year. It just looks bad that the World Final we're having these type of experiments. Same thing with the whole standard situation with Heroic, which we discussed in the previous episode. It just kind of tarnishes it a little bit in that regard. It's not the culmination of all the best teams in the world like you'd want to expect. Some teams are trying different things, but that's Counter-Strike as a whole, right? That's the game we have as a whole. Different. I mentioned it towards the start of the show when I was going on my little bit of a tirade, just discussing the fact that different teams are at different parts of their progression and making different decisions in different tournaments. So look, seeing more of it, as long as we understand the rationale and people can see the justification there, that's all that we're really looking for, right? But Navi definitely need to go through another, I don't want to say rebuilding process. I don't think they need to like fucking flatten the thing and start again, but they definitely need to go sit on a rock and find themselves, right? They need to go on one of those little, I don't know, shaman-esque tours, take some ayahuasca and, get the demons out of the system and get back in the server because
I think we all need to do that. Like Bit, let's do that.
Yeah. Bit was in some good form though. That was one of the takeaways. Like Bit had found the ability to headshot and such again, like Roka was it Roka? But yeah, Bit,
Jesus.
I got to get some of them in there. But he was at least looking a little bit like his former self, which was good to see, I thought. But overall, it just feels like they are a little bit in the weeds right now, which is understandable considering everything we know that's been going on with Navi this year.
Man, I thought about that when you were talking about like your favorite players to watch this year, and like Bit when he was having that Inferno game against Heroic was so much fun to watch. That was a crazy performance. I fucking loved it, and it was good too because like I felt like Navi was carried mostly by consistency from Perfecto and good performances from Bit throughout most of this event. Like Simple was relatively quiet at this event.
Maybe he's been screwed because he can't spam the AWP anymore. Maybe that's the Simple nerf. Valve have finally done it.
Okay.
They've finally done it.
I think it's also for Bit, same like we say for FaZe, it's kind of when Broky has a really good event is when they go on to win the tournament, right? Because the other players are more or less consistent, I guess, probably looking more towards ROPS and twists, right? So that when someone else kind of really pops off, that's when they go on to win a tournament. It's like, you can rely on Simple, okay, not to have 150 rating every event, but to be good, but he needs help. So recently it's been Perfecto really stepping up at a couple of tournaments, and yeah, Bit had a couple of matches here, but obviously he's not playing on the level that he was at last year when we switched to LAN, and that's probably not only Bit's fault in a sense that he's just been worse off individually. It's just like the situation within the team and the game and so on. It's more difficult to play well, right, when there's maybe more unknowns in your game and more mistakes being made, and you don't have that same sort of confidence, right? So I thought as well, because that happened early on, that if he can keep that up, then now he can actually maybe make a run. But in the end, they lose to the NA's finest, Jason.
Fuck yeah, baby.
Team Liquid.
But look, Liquid have made 2 finals in a couple of months, right? And I know one of them was against Vitality in the Pro League final, and then obviously we have this one here. But Yakinda came in before the break, right? If we're just going to give everybody a bit of history, he came in before the break. He wasn't officially signed until after the break, where they worked everything out. I think, what was the report that he paid some of his own buyout or something?
Yeah, they had to find some workaround because since he was being bought from a Russian org that was sanctioned. But yeah, he had to pay, I think, a significant portion of his own buyout or pay the whole buyout or something. He negotiated himself, and then Liquid picked him up after that buyout occurred.
Same way how Cloud9 bought the Gambit roster, not from Gambit, but from a Norwegian whatever. So
yeah, it was all weird. Okay. It was just a bunch of weird workarounds. Just
pretend we're not really
PR
giving money
purposes.
To these people.
Yeah, they're still getting the money.
Yeah.
Talking about PR.
Here we go.
Here
right?
we go.
The whole G2 fan Russian flag situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I did see
I want to
this.
touch on this because first of all, I want to say that's the job of the coach slash manager slash whoever the fuck is there to like be a step ahead of that and notice it. Maybe whether this guy slid in at the last second, whether he was there from the start, right? Like it's your job to protect your players, and like you should be like, hey man, like you can take the picture, it's fine, but don't do it with the flag. And I don't even want to get into the whole politics of it. The simple answer is the problem that the flag right now is that it symbolizes something bad, acts of aggression, terrorism, however you want to call it, and it's just unnecessary for you to do that and to bring it into a picture. Whether he's going to be in the arena with it and flaunt it all the time he wants, that's his sort of a thing. But for that, there's no need for him to do that with the players in front of the picture. And I don't blame the players as much, in a sense of they're probably still euphoric after the win, probably went through someone's head, but by the time they thought about whether I should stop this or not, the picture was already taken. Right. That's the first thing. But the more important thing is like the reactions after that. And I don't even simple as he is, right? Like for him, obviously, and he's been very vocal about things ever since the situation in Ukraine started and whatnot. And obviously he's personally very invested into that whole thing. But the army of people who were like also after that disqualified the players, disqualified the team, I don't know, this and that, and something that is so unreasonable where it's like, and I don't want to talk about this for too long. I just want to say Ocelot actually quoted it and he tweeted out, and I think like that's probably one of the best takes on the situation. It's like, yeah, how about we stop holding people to extreme standards and expect them to be 100% educated on 100% of the multi-layered issues going on in the world, and let them do their fucking jobs in peace instead. What are they gonna do? Fight the fans? And I don't agree with this 100% of everything he said. I think you need to be educated about big things that are going on, right? But also it's like insane to hold them to I don't know which standard, and also I don't think it's reasonable behavior to call for their heads because there was a Russian flag in a picture that some fans took with them. Like I think that's definitely taking it too far, and everyone who thinks that's reasonable I think is overreacting.
Yeah, look, I think that this is becoming more and more commonplace in the sense like the outrage, right? Things in isolation. If we would just look at this one scenario that we're talking about right now, and the reactions of different people around the community and stuff, and everything like that. Right, we all know what's going on between Ukraine and Russia, and it's fucked up. And I don't think any of the G2 players, if you sat them aside and you said, yo, do you think this is good? Do you support the war? None of them are going to say, yeah, we support the war, right? Like that right there, like I don't think that's the case whatsoever. I think you bang on there, though, Yanko, like in the sense that look, there was tweets out of the G2 camp, apologizing for it happening and saying that they I don't want to misquote it, so I won't. But they definitely came out and they were remorseful for what had happened and what had transpired. But people are just looking to go for the jugular over everything. Like it's just fucking who can we take down next? What has somebody done that's a tiny bit wrong culture that we can come for? Exactly, right. And I grew up with the motto of those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, right? And that's why with 99.9% of the shit that I'm talking about, it's Counter-Strike related. Right, it's got nothing to do with anything else because I stay in my fucking lane, right? And my lane is Counter-Strike, and I'm not out here just to be on the fucking internet and just try and tear other people down over crazy bullshit. You boys know we talk about shit. There's stuff that pisses me off all the time. But I don't go out there on the internet and start like just going after people because of it, because I actually have things to do with my life. I'm not just some fucking sad individual. So look, it's just another one of these scenarios where I think everybody, if we could go back in time, would like to make sure that didn't happen and that didn't go down that way, and we could find ourselves in a much better position than what we have. But fortunately, I would say that level heads prevailed for the most part because it was another one of these classic esports situations, which is out of the news cycle within 24 to 48 hours, pretty much, right? That's normally what happens here. Most of the things, unless it is like really quite heinous, or premeditated, or there's intent behind it, or someone is just an absolute fucking cunt. Normally these things get sorted out quite quickly with it, because this is the thing, and this is why I know that I get baited in with so much stuff. It's the vocal people. They're just saying something. They're just throwing words out into the void a lot of the time. Like there's usually not a whole lot behind it, and they just want to get a reaction. They're just like a bully in school, They just want to get that reaction. So, yeah. Look, I think that was at the hotel, that picture as well, right? So that's not even something that could be policed by the TO. Like that's not like even Blast's job to make sure that people aren't bringing in. Yeah, right. Like there's so much, like the dickhead who had the fucking flag. Like fuck that guy. Like that's the one person here who we can all just go, yeah, fuck that guy. Like I think that's probably the fairest thing I can say here. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And then mic drop. I love a good mic drop. Yeah, love a good mic. Look, I wanted to talk about Liquado a little bit here, gentlemen. Yeah. I wanted to get your because I know, Yanka, we spoke about this a little bit more on last episode, and you were giving your reason on what you think about Liquid, but they have made 2 finals in the last couple of months here, so there's definitely something to this team. I saw some critique about OC. But the way that this team is kind of built, they have 4 strong pieces and then an in-game leader, right? This is how a lot of the teams towards the top of Counter-Strike are kind of built at the moment, right? You have a lot of strong riflers who can do everything that you need them to do. They can clutch, they can entry frag, they can get that multi-kill impact, and then you have an impactful AWPer. But I saw like OC getting put in those sites, right? I saw him being... can you be a top team if your AWPer's not one of your stars, blah, blah, blah. What do we think about the OC situation here? Because, true. Very, very,
Although
very true.
He's the, Kaden is the in-game leader, so I don't know if that affects it a little bit. But...
Is OC dragging him down? Because I don't think so, right? Like it doesn't feel like he gets given an awful lot of resources as the AWPer in the team.
I think
right?
It
doesn't feel like he gets built
it's
around.
It's a little bit of a Furious situation. It feels like, right? Where it's
he's
more has to be more of a supportive element, because obviously you have Yakinder who's very aggressive and now like in that entry fragger role, but also Elige is, by nature more of an aggressive player. Definitely, I imagine a guy who likes to make some moves and likes to do things as well. So when you have already 2 players like that, the AWPer doesn't have too much space to really do similar things, right? And especially I think as well because OC was a sort of I don't want to say a rookie, but a younger player who was brought into. So if it was someone like Dexter on that team, he would assert himself pretty much and demand things and sort of make them give him space. But OC is probably just doing what he's told and trying his best for what's best for the team. So I think there's an element of that where he just doesn't have as much space, but also, you want to see a little bit more impact regardless of that. And for Liquid in general, you look at that final as well. I mean, obviously you just talk about Mirage. They were like on a 7-8 map win streak, beating, Navi twice on it, FaZe beating G2 on it at the same tournament as well earlier, though it was a 16-14 game, and to lose it in the end. So it's a little bit more just also as a team kind of still ironing out some kinks where that's going to make him play a little bit better, I feel like, as well.
He's been in the team for a year now.
Yeah.
Right? They've changed a decent amount in the year, though.
Yeah, they have. And I mean, they've slowly been improving, I think. And even at this event, I noticed some new things that they've done that I hadn't seen in the past. But I said pretty much the same sentiment to Harry when we were talking like between games, because it's like OC isn't that like assertive AWPer that's going to go make the play, because he has Elige who always wants to be finding a place to make a play, and as you said with Yakinder. So I very much share that sentiment. I think if there's one area where OC can have like a huge jump up in his performance and his impact for Liquid, he's another one of those. And Modesty had this problem too earlier on in the year, and most young AWPers I feel like do stepping into the professional scene is OC needs to get better at just hitting like the angles that he's holding as an AWPer. You know, like the alt mid angle on Inferno to top mid, like hitting that shot when they come in. I always get a little bit nervous when I just see him holding an angle because it's not like I feel like it's not a high percentage shot for him to hit. But obviously he's like one of those oppers where if you get him moving and let him get in a position where he can like peek around the boxes and be the aggressor, like he can nail those shots. He hit some beautiful ones there. But the holding angle shots, he struggles with. So I think that's one area where he can definitely improve over the break if he focuses on it. I think one of the other things for Liquid too, because this was like one of my 3 things that I said last week Liquid needed if they wanted to make that jump up. I was super impressed with Nitro at this event. Like I was really, really impressed with like Nitro getting back to form, and like he didn't have any like crazy blowout event, and he's never going to be that guy that has like an MVP level event. But I thought he did his job phenomenally as an anchor on certain bomb sites for Team Liquid. And he was like eerily good at just finding like critical double kills. Like he was good for 2 when he was in situations where I feel like a 1-for-1 was like the best he could do. So I thought he had a very, very good tournament, even if like he's never going to light up the scoreboard and blow up the stats sheet.
Yeah, it like this is the thing, because of where I see Counter-Strike at the moment, I have a very hard time with any of these teams that I consider to be like I don't know if I want to go as broad as a top 10. Maybe it's a bit more of a diluted top 10, because we're talking like Heroic, Outsiders, G2, Liquid, FaZe, Navi, once they get everything kind of sorted there. So there's already 6 names in the mix. Cloud9, right? I understand that they're still a puzzle piece away, or we as we understand it, that they're looking to make some roster changes, but there's still a team who are on the precipice of this, right? There's still a team who can compete with these names, and then I guess you could even look to throw. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Vitality anymore. I was very hopeful when the Spinx edition came in, because I thought we'd see ZywOo Spinx as this like buddy duo from some 90s cop film, but it hasn't really panned out that way. So I don't know.
Get off the train. If you're still on the Vitality train, get off the train.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay. What? All right. What? Why?
You
don't think they've got the juice?
No. I think at this point, it looks gross. Like it's not fun to watch, and I think I don't know. I think they've had enough time to show that they're capable of it, and I think not being able to build on that success from the Pro League victory hurts. I think one of Apex or Dupree probably needs to get changed. I think one of those 2 guys has got to be the next move. Dupree or Apex. And I don't know which way you'd go. I guess it depends on the in-game leadership and how you feel about that, and how the players individually are feeling, like if they're going to be motivated to grind a little bit. But those 2 guys, I think it's almost like those are the 2 guys on this squad that I would expect to be the space makers, right? Because I mean, Apex as an in-game, historically an entry fragger, but as the in-game leader liking to take space. Dupree is another guy you would put as wants to be one of those initial aggressive moves to make some space for his team. And I think those are the guys that seem like the most kind of, older guys that you could probably find a skilled youngster to replace. And I don't know, both of them just seem to be falling flat for me. And I think if you look at that Magus, ZywOo, and Spinx core, there's a lot of fragging power. Magus has had some really good events, and obviously ZywOo and you just brought Spinx in. You don't really touch them. I think you have to look elsewhere.
Spinx is the interesting one in this whole conversation, though, right? Because in the Snappy system, or in the Snappy approach to the game, he was fucking god tier. Like he would always be able to find impact no matter what, right? He was that consistent pillar for that team. And then you have to question, well, was that because of the play style that Snappy, being a bit more aggressive, having a bit more faster moves in the mix, it would just put Spinx in these situations where he was able to come through and clean up, or I don't want to say he's competing with like ZywOo or Magus here like for space in the team, but maybe there is a conversation to be had about something along those lines, right? Because he's in ENTS, he was the star. Like other players could definitely contribute. Don't get me wrong. We all remember like Dia having some good games. There's players in the team that can contribute in those facets, but it wasn't in the same consistent, because it doesn't feel like, if you look at the year in reflection right now, no one goes, oh yeah, ENTS were pretty sick this year. ENTS were good for the first 6 months, just like FaZe were FaZe were the best for the first 6 months. But Ence's reign, or Ence's at least claim to being a good team, I can break this year up. I can snap it in two. And I can say my top three teams from the first 6 months were FaZe, Navi, and Ence in that order. But then in the second half of the year, I can't give you an order of who my top three teams were. It's not possible for me to do. Maybe I'd be able to make an argument for FaZe somehow still being the best, but they didn't win anything in the second half. And then where does, how much do you weight the outsiders' major victory? How heavy does that put them? To look back in reflection of this year and go like, who were the top three teams? I think you'd have a very hard time doing it. I think you'd have a very hard time doing it indeed. I don't, you could say it was FaZe's year for sure, but if you were just looking at this second six that after the break, I don't know how I would even look to kind of peg these teams. So Vitality won Pro League, and then you go into the World Final. Sydney, you're saying people need to be off the train. So, look, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say, like, is it the style of approach of the game? Like, are they not getting enough out of Spinks as an individual here? Because you bring him in for Masuda, you wanted him to be filling a certain role. Is he fulfilling that role? Right, that's up to the team to answer that question. And if he is, well, is this the level of impact that you're expecting? Like, were you expecting to get a little bit more juice out of him here? Because he's the third highest rated player. It's actually Magiska's the second highest rated player, I think, for this roster as the way it is right now. And they're another one of these rosters that's only really been together for the 6 months, but it's only one piece as opposed to two pieces. So how do we weight that in the whole conversation? It starts to get a little bit harder for me to determine where the floor is, right? For the floor is in the FLAW as opposed to the FLOOR. And then you go, well, was Vitality better off when they were full French last year?
Yes.
Because this project going international was only this year. It's like, fuck, there's a lot of things to look at.
Here's the problem as well for them, right? So Jason said Dupree or Apex, right? And obviously Dupree is better individually, but Apex is the captain and the in-game leader and so on and so on. But the fact that Zonic is the coach of that team, there's a very real scenario in which he kind of says, all right, Apex needs to go, Magisk is going to be the IGL, and they're going to bring another rifler. Because during that time in Astralis when Glay was on leave or whatever, Magisk took over the in-game leader. I think even for a little bit of time while Glay was playing, whether it was him wanting to just take a break off of leading and whatnot, like I think there was that as well. So that's also a possibility that could happen. And then, I mean, I don't know if it's rumors or it was said somewhere. I can't really remember. The Xtaz and Niag, that whole situation is because they want to go do a French project. I don't know if that means joining one of the teams that are already fully French or starting something or whatever, right? But in that sort of a universe, Apex and Xtaz had a great relationship, and that was last year or the last couple of years when Vitality was top 3 last year and so on. So it could even be portrayed as a sort of a win-win situation potentially.
I see what you're saying.
But for me, the biggest problem with Vitality is, like we talked a couple of episodes ago, similar that it was to G2 until like this tournament and maybe the last, was that they're just so stressed. Like they look so stressed all the time, and the pressure is really big, and I don't think they are having fun in that team, right? Like, and that sounds maybe a little bit not funny, but I don't know, counterintuitive, but you need to find a way to make it fun again, right? And that might be tricky for that particular lineup because, you have the Astralis guys who were used to winning so much, and then also, I mean, Apex who's extremely competitive and hates losing and wants to be the number one, and you have Zaiwu there who's the top 2 player in the last 3 or 4 years without a doubt. So you have the pieces, you have more or less everything, but you're not getting the results, and that can be extremely stressful, right? And the natural answer for someone like Apex is, we need to work harder, we need to work more, but at some point it starts doing more harm than good, right?
Yep, I know what you mean with that. Yeah. That's where it's hard to get out of this whole scenario you find yourself in, right? It's like being in quicksand. The more that you struggle, the more that it's going to pull you down. So I find it hard to sit here, and especially with the team in this moment of Counter-Strike who's won an event in the last 6 months. and it was a pretty stacked event. It had all the names you'd be looking for. I guess that the only thing that you take away from it is how close it was to the break. But again, the teams are at different points in their cycles, so I don't know. Is Shuey a conversation? In-game leader for Gamer Legion, is he a conversation point for any, not necessarily vitality? Like, I'm not just like throwing him as like a band-aid fix here, but is he a conversation point for any teams at the moment? Like,
I think he can be.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think he can be. He can definitely.
He's got to be.
Yeah?
He's got to be on the list that you're gonna watch, right? Because
have a conversation.
Yeah, especially after the RMR and the major. I think that was a good event for those players to put their names in the ring. I think it's still a little young and inexperienced for it to be like a home run move, but it's certainly like a move if you're going to invest in him being like the future in-game leader for your project. I think that he certainly got to consider him as one of the up-and-comers at the moment.
Yeah, so that's a name that is like a little bit scary if you are like an Apex or something.
And here's the thing as well, like, you're always going to have to take a risk on an in-game leader pretty much, right? Because the ones that, you obviously want someone that's proven and experienced and a good player and whatnot, but if you have an in-game leader like that, you're probably never letting him go if you're an org, right? Like, I mean, that's why even when I was coming into FaZe, I was trying to persuade them to not remove Kerrigan, right? Because there's no one who I think came close, like, as a suitable replacement, right? It would have to be some, and I think you look at our roster in that period where we were trying to find someone do it, and it wasn't like great. Like, it was very hard to figure things out and put together a roster that makes sense, right? So you have to take a risk in some way, whether that's going to be a young player who's maybe not as experienced but he's skilled, or it's going to be someone who's maybe a little bit older but you can tell that he is a good in-game leader, but maybe a little bit weaker individually, like, for example, Hooksy, right? And also the results with Copenhagen Flames were decent, but, not mind-blowing, right? So whoever you are, you're going to have to take a risk of some sort, and it's up to the, coach, management, whoever, to sort of do the evaluation and look at what is it that they need the most. Do they have enough firepower? So do they need a player who can frag as well, or is that fine as long as he does more, maybe micromanaging and a little bit more of the extra tactical work, so that alleviates some of the pressure from the other individuals?
Yeah, I think that it's a strange situation for a lot of these teams going into the break, because you can reflect and you go, well, actually, we did all right in patches. It's only them who is going to know if they feel if it's all gelling properly, right? Because that's the thing. From what we watch and what we see to what goes on in practice and the way that the team, carries themselves, or the conversations that happen around the team, right? If there are any rifts, we a lot of the time won't really get to know that until these roster changes happen. So I guess that's what this next couple of weeks is going to be before we get back underway with Blast next year. Speaking of Blast's best performing team has to be OG, doesn't it? The OG again. Right, I think like OG are what's the word I'm looking for here? They are the biggest underdog, right? And when I say that, I don't mean that they, like, out of every single team in the whole world, nobody expects them to win anything. What I mean is, if you had a dog park full of dogs, and it was the underdog dog park,
sure.
The biggest underdog dog, right, is OG. Like, they're fucking scary, but they're still an underdog. You know what I mean? Like, we don't look at this team and go, okay, they're going to come in and win events. We know what potential they have with the players and maybe the style that they have, but they come into this event, and I think that's because nobody... I don't want to say nobody's expecting them to do anything, but when you go into a tournament and OG's there, they're not considered your biggest threat, right? I don't think too many teams are going OG
at all, almost.
Yeah, and then they come through, and it's been consistent for them throughout the Blast tournaments this year. We're talking about their inclusion in the World Final, and I know that Striker wrote that article about them being there, and just how funny it turns out when he writes those articles. We had the Imperial one, and now we've had this OG one, but they come through and they put up a decent showing of Counter-Strike again, and it's like, what are we meant to do with this result? Like, how do we even quantify this?
It doesn't. Yeah, go on, Yako.
I think the problem is as well, like, the series against Liquid. I think I even said it, like, they can go to the final because they were playing so bad. Like, this is probably where they play well and get into the final or something. They were in the semi against Liquid, And they beat them on Liquid's pick, on Overpass, right? And Neofrag's playing great. He's leading the way. And then you go to Inferno, where even I think their coach said that they think they're one of the best Inferno teams in the world at the moment. And that's where, both Neofrag and Fiku have like a pretty poor game. Fiku especially, right? Nexa is at the top of the, rating, not at the top of the frags. And it's where they lose out 19-7 in opening kills on a map like Inferno, where that just feels like that's probably one of the more even one when it comes to that category, which tells you probably some mistakes happening, getting caught a lot more than you're supposed to as well, right? And then on Anubis, they lose 16-7 to Liquid with a 14-9 advantage in opening kills, right? So
they had that 1v4 as well.
Yeah, from Dexter. So it's just like a lot of...
Oh, shit, yeah.
It's because the manner in which they lose these games is what prevents you from having like faith in them and confidence, right? Like if it was even like a close game or and they just get bested out, but you're like, okay, this is looking up, they're getting there, right? Like they need a bit more time to add a few more protocols to get used to this, used to that, whatever it is, right? But the manner in which they end up losing, it's like, man, this team is like so far away from being good on a consistent basis, right?
I think it doesn't.
It's weird they only played 3 series.
It doesn't.
Sorry, Jason.
No, it doesn't change my mind on OG at all. Like I think they've. I'm with you guys. It's looked impressive. It's cool at times, and you can see the way it's supposed to work, and you can see they have the players to make it work. But I mean, they still haven't won a playoff game. Even with all these good performances and like top 3-4 looks great when you go to the HLTV page and see that fall finals and spring finals, they were top 4 at both, but they were off the back of like really good group stages, and then they skip directly to the semifinals and they lose. Like they still haven't won an actual playoff series. So I think like just the finishing due to the lesser amount of teams at the event makes it look a lot better than it is. And I'm not saying OG's bad, but I still it doesn't change my mind from what we said a week ago, which is just that we're going to see OG have good games and we're going to see them fall flat. They're just inconsistent with that level of performance at the moment. And I think the most damning thing is what Yanko just mentioned, where they have such a good job in opening kills and can't close out the rounds in these big games. Dexter going into this matchup against Liquid had like a 2.1 rating in opening kills. Like he was killing 90% of the opening fights that he was in. He was winning. Like it was 1 out of 10 that he would actually lose.
That's crazy.
Like it was a nuts event and for him.
That's almost like a cheat code if you're an in-game leader.
Yeah, it's incredible, and a lot of it. I'm assuming a lot of it comes from like CT side of holding an angle, holding a position with the op, and just getting that first kill. But like there were even in that series casting at OG Liquid, there were plenty of 4v5s that Liquid converted across that series. Like when someone found the opening kill from OG and they just couldn't hold on to it, which was had to have been frustrating for them. I think that and like pistol rounds were 2 of their big missteps. But this is OG for the moment, and I think it's positive. I think I think they've showed some huge steps up, and I'm not saying anything negative about them. I hope this team, I'm assuming this team and these performances have bought them enough time to keep this roster together and see how it's going to start 2023 after the break. And then we still just have the same question of, are they going to turn the corner? Are they going to get there?
Well, OG tend to give their rosters a long time, right? That org tends to give their teams a long time to try and mature and develop, which I think is pretty unique when you look at like a G2, right? Or a Vitality or whatnot, who are changing a little bit more frequently than that. So I think as well, in terms of the development of players like Fiku and Neofrag, when you see the highs and you know what's possible, it kind of would fill you with some hope that, hey, if we just keep plugging along and then eventually we find that consistency, then we can be a name to actually be feared. I think what is important for them potentially, I don't even know if they would think this. It depends on how loud the noise gets about the conversation. But they've become like the new Astralis, right? Like they're in the sense that the only place that they're doing anything is in the Blast event. And as the conversation ramps up around how close the Blast events are seeming these days, I think for OG, who are going to be in Katowice, I believe in the play-ins, it's going to be important for them to have a good showing there, right? Get from the play-ins into the main event, from the main event, get as close as you can to the playoffs. If you can get into the playoffs of Katowice, that could be the breakthrough, that this team is looking for. But that's going to be such a difficult field to do so. With the positive side of that being it's out the gates pretty early within the season, and they will have some warm-up matches at Blast to put them in the right direction. But they can't have another like ESL Challenger Melbourne event where they go and they lose to just a dog-tier team. Like they can't have a bomb out in the play-ins. Like that for a team like this, that kind of feels unacceptable, right? It feels that they need to. Those are the games, like when they go up against these much lower opponents, they need to be putting away. It doesn't matter if they win 16-14, they just need to be putting them away. And then when we turn our attention to them playing against the Vitality, then going up against a Liquid in a best of three, in a playoff, those conversations can feel a little bit more legitimized. But I think you're right, Jason. It's just too hit or miss. Like it's too much of a good thing, when it shouldn't be. And at that point, it's hard to believe that there is going to be any follow through when there should be the consistency of this team. So, yeah, I'm still. I don't know if I'm hopeful. I don't think I'm hopeful.
I like what I see from some of the pieces. I like that I've seen. It feels like Neofrag has gotten better as the year has gone on since he joined the roster. I think Flames is a piece you can be really, really happy with, despite the fact that he struggled.
I've always
in the
liked Flames. Yeah,
Dexter's obviously great. I think Fiku was showing. He was very, very clutch. He was like one of those guys who just like finds a way to have impact in important moments. So they have some cool pieces. Nexus calling was good at this event. Very simplistic style. Nothing too crazy. Nothing fancy, but his reads were good, moving them around the map. I think they might be playing a little bit too much of a grouped up style that's going to be easier to read as time goes on, which might be a problem down the road. But I think they have I think the players and the pieces and the way it looks inside the server, I think they should have some more time with this roster and continue to see how the improvements are going to change things.
Well, do we want to keep going, gentlemen? We've been going for 2 hours.
A little bit more.
Doesn't feel like it.
I think it's fine. It's the end of the year. Like people.
Chad,
I got nowhere to be, mate.
We have a call in 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's heaps of time.
Nice.
Okay. 35.
So
35.
To touch quickly just on Blast World Finals, Config and Heroic, he had a good tournament, but I don't think that mattered. I think it's like no one questions really his skill on the server as much as they do his personality and commitment outside of the server. And I know he tweeted and said this is the 7th time in 3 years he's the most motivated he's ever been. So I don't really care about what he says at all. Everything Config says, I don't care. I just care about
he is one of those players.
I have zero trust in anything that comes out of his mouth. The only thing that matters is whoever gives him a chance. Okay, Heroic, he was just standing in. But he has to prove it every day, almost forever, until he stops playing. Right, and has to show his change in commitment with teams and his approach and the level of seriousness and professionalism he's going to have. That's what's always been a sort of a question mark with him. It was never his skill, never. So yeah, I mentioned this because I want to tie into the whole Astralis situation with failing to qualify for Katowice, because I don't even want to get into this ridiculousness. We mentioned it a little bit in the last episode. I feel like this Cash Cup situations and the points and the ESL's world ranking and everything and how it needs to be reworked, and that these loopholes, but things shouldn't have really happened the way they did. I feel like you need to find a way to attribute the points in a better way. But, we saw the news or the report that, Astralis is looking to buzz as they have, the attempts to sign Stair and Shush have fallen through. Finally, the two names that we were mentioning on the podcast as probably the best kind of pieces to add. And I'm not sure how that happened. I mean, obviously, probably the teams asked for more money than Astralis was willing to pay. It's a simple why it didn't happen. But I feel like, as I said before, Astralis should have paid pretty much whatever it is that they ask. I can't imagine, for someone like Stair, that they would ask like 600K. It's probably a couple of 100,000, you feel like. And that sounds like a lot even from him and even for Sprout to ask for that much. But I feel like Astralis should have paid, because you don't want to have someone who you don't truly believe 100% fits the team or is good enough to be in the team and get your third or fourth option, right? When you have Device, Blame, and Glaive, well, even Zipex in a sense of that he's like getting up there in age, right? And they don't have time to spend a year to get this guy adjusted and for him to gain experience. You want someone who's ready to play now and that you're able to win now. So in all of that sort of a scenario, how do you think there's a possibility that Config just goes back to Astralis? Like Astralis takes him back?
I think it's too much of a risk for Astralis to do that. Just from the optics, I think, right? I think that this team...
Oh, yeah, because Astralis is a team that really cares a lot about fucking optics. Jesus Christ, Chad.
I don't know. I don't
just
think
get
he goes
Config back, sign Hunden as a coach, right? I mean, they already announced that they extended the guy.
And become the bad boys of Counter-Strike.
Yeah, become the fucking dipshits of Counter-Strike.
Well, look, I don't know. If the Config situation was like a legitimate situation, then like this team, if you added Config instead of Mister, or we would say it's a pretty decent team. I think that there could probably be another roster change in the mix there as well, but Config would still come plagued with his inconsistency, which had nothing to do with the outer server issues anyway. Well, I don't know, maybe they did, but he still came with baggage in the server, and this is the thing we've been saying about Config for years, right? Like back in the North days when he would be one of these guys who would be so quick to jump up to 15 or 16 kills in a server, right, and get you that impact super early, and then he'd taper off for the rest of the game, and then now in more recent times, he has a game where he drops 30, and the next he's getting you just 12 kills. He's not a consistent star performer, which I know is difficult to do at the highest level of Counter-Strike, don't get me wrong, but when the team needed him to perform alongside of Blame for them to be anything to consider, that wasn't the case. They weren't delivering in that facet. And I think if you can just get a player like Blame and use him more aggressively, which is what I think that they've been trying to do anyway, and you can still get him to produce in the way that he produces, I don't know if you need Config. I think that that's why maybe a player like, obviously they didn't get him, but a player like Shush would have been, fantastic for this mix. So, there has to be more Danish talent. There has to be, right? There's no way that the tap is shut off now. There has to be more names. If anywhere is going to have it, it's going to be Denmark.
Yeah, Copenhagen.
Right? They have. They've cultivated. They've cultivated this over the last couple of years because of Astralis, right? Because of look, Buzz. I've watched a couple games where he's been in the server. Has it been anything that's blown me away? Not necessarily, but it's different levels. It's different tiers of Counter-Strike. And now that Astralis aren't going to be in Katowice to start the year, then they get a bit more lead in time with this kid to try and get him up to snub.
Well, they have last groups.
That's true. And then they'll be in Pro League as well, won't they?
Yep.
Because they're a partner team. So, okay, yeah, okay. Well, they will have stuff going pretty quick for them. I don't know. I don't think they would turn back to Config. I don't have any information as to why I think that, but I just don't. I don't think they will.
I think the behind the scenes stuff, I think, is, as much as Astralis has been shockingly bad at PR, I think that's still something important to them that would prevent them from bringing Config back. And I think also in-game wise, remember, the Config experiment didn't exactly work when he was within that team. It's not he had some good step up, some good events, but overall, that whole thing fell flat. So whatever it is in the style that Astralis was trying to play, Config didn't really seem all that comfortable in it. And also,
their best event was their first event, right, where they were in the Royal Arena.
And I'll just say this too: Config did give, and this is why I'm with Yanko on don't listen to anything that comes out of Config's mouth. It's not that he was lying, I don't think, but he did give that interview before the Worlds began, where he was like, "It's been a while since I've had this fire lit underneath me," and it's just do you realize the implication of what that actually means? You just spent a year in Astralis, struggling, trying this whole thing. You're telling me that fire wasn't lit when you returned to the #1 Danish org at the time and wore that jersey and were playing within that legacy, and throughout all these struggles, the fire wasn't there? That, the implication of that to me is just kind of fucking mental.
I thought we already had this moment of realization with him though, right? We spoke about this before,
when he did
with the Duncan
longer
article, right? It was the Duncan article comes out and it's oh yeah, we've already been here before. That's why I have a hard time sitting here going, and and people could be like, yeah, but he's a good player. Yeah, sure. I'm not going to argue that. I'm not sitting here to debate that fact. But it's not about that, right? Like, Counter-Strike is a heavily mental game. And if you're going to have someone who's fucking around outside the server and isn't all there inside the server either, with what you've just brought to the table here, Jason, with that little tidbit, it's like, well, is this the player that we want anyway, right? Like, I don't know. I have a hard time. Look, config sounds like me when I'm saying I'm going to get in shape. You know, oh fuck yeah, I want to get a whole new wardrobe. I want to get in shape and everything. I'm going to fucking do it. And then, a week later, after going to the gym every single day, I have one day where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to order a Pizza Hut pizza, and then I'm off the fucking wagon again. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't. Like, it reeks of like Instagram inspo posts without anything behind it. And I hope I'm wrong, right? I really do, but the proof is in the pudding.
I mean, mate,
not
to pile on him and everything, but he's like, he gave another quote in this HLTV one where he's like, I'm here to prove something that I've proven so many times over. And then he gave like an interview with a different publication at the event. I think it was at like play.gg, where he was just like, I think it's fucking crazy. I have to prove that I can do this. And it's just like, I just can't. It's like, there's so much whiplash back and forth. And like, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, it feels like someone saying the right things for the sake of saying the right things without actually.
It goes with the play style, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so if the shoe fits, I don't know. I have a hard time. I'm disappointed not to have Astralis, especially now that you have Device and Blame in that team in Katowice, because I think they're just taking turns carrying at the moment. From map to map, Device will drop 30, next Blame will drop 30. That could actually turn out to be a pretty fun bit of a duo there. But as we know, top tier Counter-Strike at the moment, you need 4, right? We've had these evolutions, remember? It's like, yeah, you need a star duo.
Force and Get Right
now
era.
You need a trio. Yeah, now you need a trio. Oh, shit. Actually, we need 4 players and an in-game leader that will throw himself to the wolves every round. So that's where we're at right now. And I think Astralis have, what have they got? They've definitely got 2. So they need to find 2 more. So there's a few more changes that will have to happen before that can be a conversation, isn't it? Like Glaive would have to go and find some different form to be able to contribute in that facet. Look, hold up? Let me bring up the teams here in Katowice. Is there the fact that they're keeping Castle as the coach? I thought that was interesting. I thought that they would have announced Hunden by now, to be completely honest with you.
Well, that was the problem.
They're going to keep him behind the scenes for a few months first.
There's not really that many, choices for them, right? It's almost impossible to find a coach for that team. You need to coach Glaive, Zipex, and Device, who won 4 majors, right? So you need someone with authority, but also you want someone who can legitimately help Glaive with, tactical things, right? And also potentially work on developing a new young player. So this guy might be unknown to us, but it feels like the players are, have given good feedback. So hopefully that's why. I mean, Raga crossed my mind as potentially they could get him from OG maybe, but I don't know how much, how they rate him either, because it's not like he's achieved much at OG for the last 3 years or so.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I was just flicking through here to see if I could find these teams who are in for Katowice. The whole thing about MIBR is a big conversation point at the moment. I need to educate myself a little bit more on that before I talk about it in any great lengths. Here we go. Here's the
invites
little
are Outsiders,
news
FaZe, Vitality, Heroic, Liquid, Navi, Mouse, and G2.
Okay,
those are the invites.
All right. Well, that's
those are to the
that's
group stage directly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The play-ins.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I hate how it's labeled invites, but I guess it is because it's based off of
the ranking, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then you've got the play-ins, which is
Fanatics in there, Furia, MIBR, yeah.
This starts to irk me a bit. Like, I understand that we give out like these token spots to different regions, and same with almost the conference in a way. I think most of the big names are here. It is really just Astralis that seems to be the odd one out off of this list.
Yeah,
I can't see too many other glaring dramas.
I don't mind this team list a whole lot at all.
We got some Asian representation, IHC with Greyhound here as well, NIP, Cloud9, Pain, MIBR Furia representing South America, EG, aren't they lucky?
Shout out to the Cash Cups.
Shout out to the cash.
Shout out to the cash.
Complexity as well.
Oh dear. Yeah. Well, I guess we got to have a couple of them, you know, just for the sake of getting the North American lads involved in this. Well, I think that's one of the conversation topics that I think is an interesting one. It's for another time, but it's about this whole like North American representation and, you know, where are their residency and this, that, and the other. I saw Uli getting involved in some conversations about it in the last 24 hours. So that's what I'm saying. I want to make sure I read up a little bit more on that before I start spouting any nonsense about it. I was just scrolling through Twitter and I saw like Body put out a tweet longer or something. They lost to Eyeballers. So I'm sure something's melting down with heat.
No, with him it was... He didn't play in this relegation thing or whatever. And basically his tweet longer is that he was so burnt out because for 2 years, majority of it, they didn't have much support and anything. And he refused offers from like teams to join them, like bigger teams, one in NA, some like French teams, he said, which you can imagine it's Vitality, but maybe not, maybe Falcon, I don't know. But basically that, you know, he was super burnt out and he was like grinding through this time to make the team work. They had a couple of close losses, so he just kept working harder. And then he booked a flight for New Year's, like for the player break or whatever, to go to Japan because his girlfriend is there and they're like in a long distance relationship or whatever. And when they had to play relegation, the dates weren't known beforehand, and then the dates coincided with his flight. So he just like was, hey, I can't like, you know, I can't cancel this or move it or anything. I need to take this vacation because I'm going to lose my mind probably otherwise, you know, and they asked Lucky to fill in for them and he did. And then they lost to Eyeballers and that was yesterday, right? Yeah, that was yesterday. They lost to Eyeballers and they didn't qualify for the next season of Challenger.
Yeah, we've changed the name so much with all the shit.
Like they have to play in advanced.
What anything is anymore, man.
They have to play in advanced. ESL Challenger is like ECA Premier, I guess.
Yeah, but they do need to stop changing that every fucking year like clockwork.
We gotta stop changing formats and shit so often as well. Like, I hate it how we just did changing formats on like a fucking whim.
Yeah.
Some guy rocks up and goes, I don't fucking like this. And then we just change it. It's like, why, man? Can we stick with some things?
And also we're changing it from bad to worse somehow every time. It's like, it's just when you think this is the worst format there ever was. And then it's like, oh, changes to the format of this. Ooh, great. They finally like, listen, they're going to make it better. How did you come up with this? How does that person's brain work to think, to come up with that format, which is horrendous, and then also to like it, to not realize that it's horrendous and actually push it forward?
It's because you're looking at it from a competitive standpoint, and I'm
looking from it for a reasonable person standpoint, from a sane person standpoint.
Yeah, but
from a viewer standpoint.
It's obviously the team organizations stepping in and wanting formats that, you know, give them more chances to go deeper into the tournament.
Sure,
make them last longer before elimination. They're prioritizing like brand exposure.
No one wants to watch that. No one wants to watch fucking rounds of games that don't mean anything. No one wants that.
I agree with you 100%.
Where no one is out. Why would you as a viewer like watch that? You're watching these teams play and you're like, we were talking about this a couple of episodes ago with the Rio Majors, like, and asked people, and they said, most of the people on YouTube said in the comments, well, they like games where there's a lot on the line, where there's like something on the line and then they know what it is. And that's what makes it exciting. And that's what people who are on the fan, of course, a G2 fan is going to watch every game G2 plays, no matter how, you know, important it is or it isn't. But, you know, those people who casually watch games, that there's a good number of them, they're going to be like, okay, so why is this important? Oh, it's not. Oh, well, I'll go watch something else.
Yeah.
And they should.
I agree. I think that the short-sightedness, did I just make up a word, of the way that that some of these formats get decided, it's nonsensical. It's cutting off your nose to spite your face, right? Like you're trying to you're trying to adapt something to make a certain group happy, but realistically, what that group wants, right? If we're talking about this from like a Louvre agreement position or like a Blast partner team position, and you have these formats that you're putting in place and it's meant to benefit the teams, right? Which is the people who pay the bills for the players, and they're thinking, oh, you know, we'll get more minutes watched, or we'll get more this, we'll get more that. Well, actually, it's going to go the other way because less people are going to tune in over time because less is on the line, so less people are going to give a fuck. So if you're just going to be putting it on for the guy that already owns the Liquid jersey, he's probably not going to buy another fucking Liquid jersey who already owns the Liquid jersey, right? So you're not making any new fans, and the current fans were going to watch anyway. So what are we achieving here? We're making it less entertaining for everybody, and it's just it irks me to no end because it's short-sighted. It's not well thought out. And this is the knee jerk of change. I know a lot of people don't like, you know, round robins that ESL do with their group format for Pro League. But I think that you can have more of a conversation about something like that than this will be something for the future. We'll get into this next year. Don't you worry about that. I fucking guarantee it. It's a money back guarantee.
Here's also like, you know why the World Cup is so... I told you guys, I think I said on the podcast, I don't like football as a game. I think it's boring, personally. I prefer other games. But I still watched, obviously, Serbia play the World Cup, their games. And I watched the final the other day with my friends at my place. And it was awesome. It was, I mean, a lot of people who follow football said it's probably the best final they've seen in their lifetime, you know, in the last 30 years or whatever. It was fun to watch and everything. And there's also obviously a lot on the line. It's, you know, a round robin group stage into a single elimination bracket, right? And it's once every 4 fucking years. So that's why, like, every game, like, just making it to the World Cup for smaller teams matters a lot. Like for Serbia, that's considered, it's a success, like, that we just made it there, right? And for someone like Brazil, obviously, Argentina, France, you know, for them, it's like winning the whole thing, right? And it's, you know, in Brazil, it's a religion, as you guys have seen from when we've been there a couple of times, right? It's like a religion in there. Like, it matters so much to the people. So it's, you know, that's why you're watching it, and it's so much pressure and there's so much on the line. And that's what makes everyone, even someone like me who doesn't like the fucking game, right? Even tune into it, because that's how big of a deal it is. That's like how much is on the line, how important it is. Obviously, it has a cult following and it's been around for 100 years, right? So it's not really comparable in that sense. But the fact that there is a lot of on the line for someone, a casual like me, is it's what makes it exciting to watch. And obviously, you want it to, if it's a draw, you want it to go all the way to the penalties, and you want to see the shootout happen and all of that stuff, right? But, you know, if it wasn't like that, I wouldn't care about watching it, right? Like, and it wouldn't have been maybe as popular. So I think it's really like, it's taking the fun out of the viewing for a lot of people when you change formats in a way where there's so many chances, because you're like, oh, so if they lose this, they can
disappear.
still, exactly. The stakes disappear. So you can't do that. And fuck the teams. Of course, as a team, of course, me as a coach as well, you know, you'd want to have 10 chances to be in the tournament, you know, because you're thinking, oh, it's just an off day. I don't want for one off day all this hard work to disappear. Well, that's life, dude. Like, you know, shit happens. You just need to fucking deal with it and keep going. You can't expect, you know, real life, it's not a game. There's no save game and then load it back up, right? And you don't get infinite chances at winning. That's why every day matters. Every day of practice matters. Every little thing matters. And they all add up to you swimming rather than sinking, right? I just hate the fact that we're lowering the stakes, right? You maybe don't need to make them higher. Maybe they were fine, you know, they were high enough, but don't fucking lower them, right? Like, what's the point? Do it so that you can, you know, the reward for the teams that don't fuck it up and do well is, oh, you skipped one game or something like that. Great. But this team who lost more, then they have a good day against you and all your hard work from before is like ruined. That's fucked up.
I think it lowers the quality of the Counter-Strike as well if the teams are aware. Like, and this is the issue, because I need to be better with my pointing of terminology here, because I've used teams for two different reasons here. But let's say, when I mentioned teams before, I'm talking organizations, right? They're the ones who want to have their players, sponsors, on camera for longer. But teams, being the actual people playing the game, right? If they are less invested because the format is more forgiving, the quality of the match, which already means less, is going to be worse. What are they? Because they know that they're playing for less. So not only does the viewer know that what they're watching is fucking watered down, the player also knows that, I'm not feeling great today, or fucking Timmy said something to me at breakfast. Fuck this guy. I'm only going to give 70% today or some shit. Like, I'm not saying
But they're
that
probably
happens,
going
but,
to be more risk prone as well, right? Like, because the consequences aren't as severe, so the punishment for taking a risk and not paying off is not as much. But then you get you get the online Counter-Strike that we've had, where people are just going for pushes and stuff, like they have balls to the ground in those sort of situations, and it's annoying because that's not realistic. Like, people used to say, oh, do it on land, because on land the pressure is higher. You're not going to do it, but you'll do it if there's not if the consequences aren't severe for it not paying off.
That's true. Gentlemen, let's wind this shit up. We've almost got... Anyone got anything we need to finish off with here? We happy to wind this up?
Now I'm happy.
Okay. I want to say one thing really quick for the exit.
All right.
It's a little bit on the negative side. I know we were at the after party. And
oh dear.
I know. But I wanted to get this out there. We were at the after party, just hanging out, and we got a chance to chat with Hooksy a little bit after his celebration, and he had mentioned like. We were just talking about bullshit and some of the player smack talk that's been going around, and then he brought it up that he'd been, with his whole situation of his father passing on the day he landed in Abu Dhabi. He'd been getting a lot of supportive tweets, and he got a lot of very bad tweets. And one of the tweets that he got was I fucking even hate repeating it. Someone said like, maybe your dad died because you suck at Counter-Strike. And
Jesus
I just wanted to put it out there in the world that if you are one of those people, like I don't think our viewers would do that, because we obviously attract a very sensible class of viewers, as we've touched on a number of times.
Classy people.
But man, if you're one of those people, I don't care if you're 12 or just fucking stop. That's fucking evil. That's some evil shit. And if you're someone sending those tweets, it's not funny, it's not cool, you're not
being edgy. You're just being
edgy.
jerk.
You're just being a fucking cunt. And like, just keep that shit in mind. That's a horrible tweet to send to somebody going through that.
Yeah, he even mentioned him. He said in the interview right after the game, right? He was talking about it, and he made the same appeal. Like, it's a real person on the other side of that monitor that you're writing to with, emotions and everything. And that stuff can get to you, no matter how much you're aware that you shouldn't read, or, some of the stuff is unavoidable to read, but that you shouldn't pay attention to it. Like, at the end of the day, we're all still humans, and it affects you. And also, just one more time, huge props to him for, first of all, just staying at the tournament, right, where no one would have said anything if he went back home and to be with his family. So under the circumstance to, probably call and lead his best tournament so far in the team and step up and just do everything that he's done in this tournament, like, that's just an incredible feat. And, the team rallied around him, and it was just like great that they were able to go all the way in this one.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, fucking hell. And the time of year we're at as well, like, when people are definitely around their family more and stuff, and people are still sending tweets, like, that's it's fucked, man. Like, we've all definitely had our fair share of, like, people sending mean tweets and shit, but that is you're right, that is evil, man. Yeah. That is just fucking ridiculous. How can you look yourself in the mirror after typing that out? Like, I feel gross.
I know. But yeah, so
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Yeah, that's all we got.
All right, we'll probably do another one of these in a week's time or something like that, right?
Yeah, after the
to close out, come up with some categories, some awards, bring on a guest. I think
we'll have a good time.
Yeah, okay.
So
I think pretty exciting guest.
Yeah, very exciting guest.
We'll leave everyone on that cliffhanger, will we?
Yes, we will.
All right, wonderful. Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon. Goodbye.